Hey, does American like Nutella?
Yeah,
Yeah, I love that too.
It
it
is.
takes
Okay,
It's
we
its
are.
a
time, but
bit
we do.
a bit unhealthy, right? But it's
The,
really awesome.
it's
Yummy.
usually the Americans who have been to Europe.
Yeah. Yep. Exactly.
Well, I'm actually Greek, but I live in New York. Nutella has been around forever for me.
Does the 7-Eleven in Thailand sells a good variety of ice cream from Japan?
Yes, 7-Elevens
Oh,
in Thailand
lucky you.
are full of Japanese stuff of all kinds.
Yeah, their CRM systems are on point. So depending on where you are, like my neighborhood in Bangkok is probably 60% Japanese.
Right.
And so I can go to my local supermarket and feel like I'm in Tokyo.
Yeah. Because even though the 7-Elevens are owned by a Thai family, they're kind of part of the Japanese company. So a lot of the products in the Thai Japanese stores are Japanese products, which is great. No complaint there.
I think there was an
You know,
article a few months ago that the 7 Holdings in Japan actually acquired the gas stand kiosk in US. So looks like the US is going to enjoy the goodies from Japan soon,
Mm-hmm.
or maybe they already have.
it is also very nice how companies actually adapt into like the different cultures that they are in. Like the McDonald's in Paris, like they made a really amazing breakfast. I was surprised, and usually really not good food in the US. And the one I am so shocked is here in Ethiopia. The first Pizza Hut opened, and Ethiopia has a lot of fasting. You know, a Christian country, and they did a fasting pizza so good, but it has no cheese or it has nothing. It's like fasting, so it has to be like vegan. So it's amazing how they do it differently in a different culture.
Okay, are we ready?
Yep, let's do
Anybody
this.
burning? Anyone got a hot one they want to share right off the top?
Well, Tyler, I had a question. I don't know if you covered it at the last one because, quite frankly, I dozed off before it ended. But I had sent you one yesterday, whatever, 24 hours ago, which was about some hacker in Philadelphia that basically had stolen like Hulu and Showtime, and basically had developed his own cable network, and he had like 800,000
Rosabella.
subscribers. Did you do that one?
No.
Oh, so I tweeted that out. So it was really interesting because 800,000 subscribers is almost like having a small cable company. No, and he was like charging $15, and he was stealing. You know, um,
That's a racket. I love it.
yeah, I know it's a really great article to
Let's do
read.
it. Let's make our own. I hate the
So
cable companies.
let me actually find it because I tweeted it out like 24
And
hours. So
Tyler, while Ken is looking for it, I just wanted to say that Apple, I know, has been in the news a lot, and there's another news breaking from New York Times, which is that European Union will require all iPhone and all other the charging cable to be standardized. So it's not good for Apple, but I guess it's good for consumers.
This is
Yeah. I
the
tweeted
biggest
that.
story
I
in
did tweeted that.
yeah, but this is the on my list of top stories. It's number one.
Oh,
all right, I
okay.
found the story. So whenever you want to do it, we don't have to do it first if you don't want to do it. So.
No, go ahead. Let's hear yours, and
Okay,
then
yeah. It
yeah.
says local YouTuber charged by FBI in one of the largest cable TV piracy cases ever, with the business acumen of a Wharton grad and what authorities describe as the recklessness of a common thief. Local YouTuber Bill Omar, I can't even pronounce his name, like Carrasquillo, I guess, went in the span of just 3 years from slinging drugs on a northern Philadelphia street corner to running a multi-million-dollar streaming TV empire. He documented every step of that journey in video post online, advertising his subscription service and flaunting his newfound wealth in slickly produced footage of high-end sports cards and diamond-encrusted bling sent to local hip hop beats. But all that came crashing down this week as federal authorities accused Carrasquillo, who better known to the nearly 800,000 who subscribe to his YouTube channel as Omni in a Hellcat, of heading one of the most brazen and successful digital piracy schemes of the last decade. And it is only fitting for an internet celebrity who has made a career out of sharing his life online. His arrest Tuesday at his home was live streamed on social media. Um, Photos of Carrasquillo shirtless and in neon boxer briefs as agents handcuffed him in his foyer quickly circulated on Instagram. A video of the arrest shows agents milling around as a woman streaming it to live to the internet, repeatedly asks what's going on. 62 count indictment. I won't name the partners, with counts including conspiracy to commit copyright violations, tax evasion, and fraud that can send them to prison for decades. And it describes the company run at various points under the names like Gears TV and Gears Reloaded as a media streamer's paradise. Subscribers had access to hundreds of on-demand movies and television shows like Game of Thrones and The Walking Dead, as well as access to dozens of live cable channels and pay-per-view events for a subscription as low as $15. All of it was stolen, the authorities said, from set-box signals of legitimate services like Comcast, Verizon, Fios, and DirecTV, and allegedly streamed to thousands of subscribers online. And they moved to strip him of $35 million in assets, including 57 luxury cars, Lamborghinis, Porsches, Bentleys, and McLarens, and a portfolio of more than 4 dozen properties he has amassed across Philadelphia and the suburbs. I don't think it's necessary to read the rest of it, but that's, pretty much it. It's a
Wow.
long article about the whole thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's ballsy to do it right in Comcast's backyard in Philly, their headquarters.
Yeah,
You
yes it
should have
is.
gone to Moldova.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
so 15 a month times 800,000 times 12. Holy shit.
That's a lot of footlongs.
And by the way, 15 a month is, as we American knows, even though 15 a month may sound actually maybe expensive on some international countries, 15 a month is vastly lower than a cable service with all those services cost here, which would be at least $60 to $90 per month over here.
I don't have a calculator, but is that like 196 million a year?
No, billion, 1.4 billion a year.
Holy shit.
That's Netflix money.
Do you
Yeah,
know
one.
what? I think his time, doing drugs, selling drugs on the street, they gave him the skill set. I'm just thinking about it from from strictly a skill set point of view. He had lots of practice. He probably went from drugs to selling, VHS and DVDs and scaled it up and out. I mean, it's crazy. It's
Lakeisha,
mind boggling.
maybe Cal could get one of these guys to be on his MBA course that he's running.
Right? I mean, you think about
Yeah.
there's a
What say?
lot to learn
They've
A
there.
got
billion?
MBAs.
I was
What?
in a
That
pitch
doesn't
contest.
sound right. A billion. It's like 800 times 15
Yeah,
is
yeah. I was
like
about to
12
say, yeah, yeah.
12 million. So I think what is that? 12
Oh, okay.
times
I thought it
12 is
was
144.
15,000.
Well, they'll have
Sorry.
plenty of time to take classes in prison, so no worries.
No,
So
15.
I was at a
Seven
pitch
seven
contest.
figures.
I was
Go
at a
ahead, Peter.
pitch contest. I was at a pitch contest a couple months ago, and the guy who won it, I was just like, all right. I was secretly telling my co-founder, like, all right, there's two directions this guy's going: straight to the top or straight to jail. I would flip a coin.
Well,
Yeah.
the thing is, like, thinking about it, you can actually show movies and things that you've bought so long as you don't charge for it. So it's really the way he set up the subscription model, right? Like if it's like a club rather than for the services, if they're just subscribing to many things, then he might be able to get away with this
No,
legally.
but you're generally right. The problem was he was charging. I'm not sure he could set up a club. I think you could show it to your friends, but once you're in a business and someone's making money, that's a whole different issue.
All right, schemers, we'll figure out a DAO this and meet tomorrow.
All of our wheels are turning. How do we do this and make it legal? No,
Uh,
joking, joking.
digital.
Whenever they arrest somebody, they like a drug dealer, they always say, "Geez, if he was just applied his efforts to
So
to
true.
society and white collar jobs, he'd be very very successful." So this guy got about halfway there.
Absolutely.
Digital hustling. Well, the key is to do it from Moldova, where you can that there's no extradition, and why people don't take that last step to
What about a resort in Thailand?
yeah. Yeah,
Oh my
wait for
goodness.
I'll open that room on the weekend. That's the paid Twitter space room that I do. So the top story, as somebody said, the European Commission proposes legislation mandating USB-C charging for mobile devices. Citing electronic waste, Apple is the main holdout from using USB-C. Let's dig into it. Here it is. And there's the photo on this article is fantastic. It shows the European Commissioner for Internet Market, Thierry Breton, holding two devices, one with a USB-C jack on it, the other is an iPhone with the Lightning, and he's got this look on his face like, what can you say? This is ridiculous. Like, it's this classic kind of European expression of hatred for Americans. Every American who's ever spent time in Paris as a tourist knows this look when you go into the
It's
bakery.
ridiculous.
What
am I supposed
you're
to
so
do
crazy.
here?
You Americans so crazy.
America's so fucking crazy.
Why you put this? Why you not use a USB-C on your device? So it's he's just he can't not do that with the lips puffed out and everything. Like what you do?
With the cigarette sometimes hanging out of the mouth.
The EU unveils plans Thursday to require smartphone makers to adopt a single charging method for mobile devices. The European Commission, the bloc's executive arm, proposed legislation that would mandate USB-C cables for charging, technology that many device makers have already adopted. The main holdout is Apple, which said it was concerned the new rules would limit innovation and that would end up hurting consumers. iPhones come with the company's own Lightning charging port, though the newest models come with cables that can be plugged into a USB-C socket. The push by the EU will certainly be cheered by millions of people who have rummaged through a drawer full of cables for the right charger. But the EU also wants to cut down on the 11,000 metric tons of electronic waste thrown out every year by Europeans. The Commission said the typical person living in the EU owns at least 3 chargers and uses 2 regularly, but 38% of people report not being able to charge their phones at least once because they can't find a compatible charger. Some 420 million mobile phones or portable electronic devices were sold in the EU last year. The new rules also call for standardizing fast charging technology and giving consumers the right to choose whether to buy new devices with or without a charger, which the EU estimates will save consumers $293 million a year. After attempting for more than a decade to cajole the industry into adopting a common standard, efforts that whittled dozens of different charging plugs down to a handful, the EU's Executive Commission is pushing the issue. Here's the quote: Chargers power all our most essential electronic devices. With more and more devices, more and more chargers are sold that are not interchangeable or not necessary. We are putting an end to that, Thierry Breton, the EU's Internal Market Commissioner, said. With our proposal, European consumers will be able to use a single charger for all their portable electronics, an important step to increase convenience and reduce waste. We remain concerned that strict regulation here's Apple's response. We remain concerned that strict regulation mandating just one type of connector stifles innovation rather than encouraging it, which in turn will harm consumers in Europe and around the world, the company said in a statement. Breton denied that the new rules would slow innovation. If Apple wants to continue to have their own plug, they will have the ability to do it. It's not against innovation. It's just to make the lives of fellow citizens a little bit more easy, Breton said in a press briefing in Brussels. Under the proposed law, which must still be scrutinized and approved by the European Parliament, phones, tablets, digital cameras, handheld video consoles, headsets, and headphones sold in the EU will all have to come with the USB-C charging ports. Earbuds Smartwatches and fitness trackers are not included.
How
Okay.
is the technology of wireless charging now?
How is it?
Yeah, I mean, is it getting better?
You mean true wireless or contact?
True wireless, contact. That means true wireless. That means you don't need any cable. You just put on top or near something, and then it
No.
will just charge.
True wireless
Yeah, but
is
that's still
nothing's touching the device.
Yeah,
Oh yeah,
and
yeah.
that works.
Nothing touching. Yeah. Is it coming soon?
You want touching the device?
Not touching.
Charging? Not touching.
Not touching.
Broadcast power.
Yeah, that's a ways away.
They have to shut down the radios, so they Huawei or somebody did that, right? And the thing is, they had to like know when someone was in the room, so they could kind of turn down the radio, shut it off, whatever.
Then how about touching then? Touching wireless.
Yeah, that's getting quite good.
Yeah,
Then we don't need cables.
I use that.
Go ahead, sorry.
Yeah, I use it every day. Yeah, it's great.
Yeah, me too.
It's-
I don't understand why that's not being made mandatory rather than
Well,
having any type of charger whatsoever.
it's super slow with Apple though. With 20 watts, it's like it takes ages.
It's slow. Yeah, it's definitely slow. But if
My Tesla has it, and that works pretty good.
yeah, and they're in the new cars, they have it as well. And it'll be interesting to see if Apple ever. There's always been rumors that Apple will remove the port entirely and force everyone to use precisely that, the magnetic contact charger on the back. But that's highly unlikely. But that would be an interesting middle finger to. Because now they're forcing them to have a USB-C port when they might not even want it.
So for those people who use Android, this is Simon from South Africa. I mean, all Android phones use the same USB port, don't they?
That's the EU's point, I think, and for the Apple devices, or any device, I think the only reason we have a port is for being able to recover the device in case it gets bricked, so to speak. Maybe when they come up with a way to have a permanent flash, kind of like the new Macs, where you can reboot it, it'll download everything from the web first. I don't know, but that seems to be for me the main proposition of why they keep a port there is they have to use a port to program it and update it and all that stuff.
Yeah, I mean the reason I asked that is because, quite frankly, this seems to be what we would call a developed country problem. No one in Africa particularly cares because most people use Android, and as far as I'm aware, they all use the same port. So EU go ahead. The rest of the world, we can live without it, or we can deal with it ourselves.
Yep, and then is a laptop a portable device? I assume it is. And does that mean my MacBook Pro runs on USB-C power? But the rumor is that the MacBook Pros that are coming out later this month, or actually in October rather, so in a couple of weeks, will have MagSafe on them, but we don't know if it's MagSafe USB-C. But it will have USB-C ports on it, but not necessarily the power port. So who knows? It's going to be interesting. Okay, so the next number 2 story is from Bloomberg and a whole bunch of other people that Facebook's CTO, Mike Schroepfer, known as Shrep inside Facebook, says he will step down next year and shift into a part-time advisor role, not to spook investors. And Andrew Bosworth, known as Boz internally, will become CTO. And Shrep says he'll hang around as long as it takes Boz to comfortably take over the position. And keeping in mind that Activision Blizzard has been in the news lately, where they're being sued and discrimination and a lot of bad behavior has been exposed in the press. And they've had a few high-profile people step down recently. Then we've read those headlines here. And then Facebook has a bunch of dirty laundry out in the press lately, and now their CTO stepping down. Do we think that all of this embarrassing dirty laundry business in the press is in any way responsible for Facebook's CTO stepping down, or is that just a coincidence?
I think it's a coincidence.
You do.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm going to take the long shot and say the CTU is going to start his own cable company.
and that's the funny thing is, first of all, as Facebook CTO, he certainly has more money than he can ever spend in his lifetime. But there's also more opportunities for somebody of his skills and background. Then there's so many opportunities. It's kind of mind blowing. There's so many ways to innovate. It's like right now has never been a better time to be a enterprising entrepreneur / developer. There's just, it's never been easier to make obscene amounts of money in tech. So we're really living in a golden age of tech innovation at the moment. So, and it's no longer restricted to just California or Silicon Valley. I mean, we cover this here every day here. India's booming. South America and Africa are gonna start booming like India is now in 2021. The early groundwork is being laid right now in Africa and South America, and China boomed so hard it's coming back down to earth. So it's a global thing. Europe, the number of unicorns in Europe is just booming. The 2021 is already a record year, and we're not even, we still got many months to go. And huge. What an incredible year for era for tech. The amount of investors is going buck wild. One of the biggest tech event organizers, Patty, today tweeted out that he said exactly that the number of investors signing up for his event this year in November is like nothing they've ever seen. It's like everyone wants to be a tech investor, including the big people with really big funds who normally focus on other verticals now want to focus on tech because they see all the buy now pay laters. They see everyone becoming unicorns. People get greedy, and that money gets sent into tech.
And if you had the skill set to be the CTO of Facebook, would you really want to be associated with Facebook right now, or would you want to take it off and have the clout and status of being the next CTO of the next biggest thing, like you said, so these startups are going to be very attractive to folks like that.
Yep.
Tyler, what's the multiple? What's the kind of, what are some of the multiples that these kind of the early unicorns, not the really mature ones, but what is their multiple on revenue or what have you that
You mean
makes it a
valuation?
unicorn? Yeah. Like, is it a million users paying $10 a month? $100,
Yeah.
$100 million
Yes.
revenue. So yeah, what's the kind of threshold that births a unicorn? The oversupply of money that's going to be going down the multiple because of the inflated valuation on the multiple. Can you share
Yeah.
that
It's
with the
it's
room?
geographic dependent. Like geographies that are really hot obviously pay much higher multiples than geographies that aren't, for example, because they're competing with a lot of other investors. And if you're SoftBank is notoriously pays a higher multiple than anybody else, which is why they get some of the deals, because some entrepreneurs will take whoever's willing to pay the most, right? So
Yeah. So it's just real quick. It's the multiple, as David's asking, I guess. It's kind of like the dotcom era, where these guys really aren't generating revenue per se. It's just that they're getting a boatload of investments. So it's that's how they're valuing it. It's not based on.
Yeah, it's cap table expansion and not based on EBITDA times multiple. So basically, at each raise, you start with a seed round. You do a series A, and at that series A, you've created dilution for you and your shareholders, and someone's bought a chunk, right? And so when they buy that chunk, they've established a price on the evaluation on the company, even if the company's not making any money. Traditionally, if you're trying to sell a company, it's like EBITDA, that's your bottom line times some multiple. But pre-revenue, all these valuations are coming from basically investors coming in at the different rounds.
Well, they're making money. Let you speak, but go ahead, Ken.
Yeah,
No, I was
some
just gonna say, well, you're a startup and you're not public. Most of them don't make money. I don't think there's an expectation you make money. You're buying into the concept. The question is, in the internet bubble, we actually had companies going public that weren't making money. That was like the first time in
yeah.
history that kind of happened because typically to go public, you used to have 3 years of profitability. And when I say profitability, I'm talking about on a GAAP standard, not EBITDA, which is not even profitability. EBITDA is just a cash flow metric that you can make interest payments if you've got debt, which is not the same as profitability. And I'll just stop there.
Yeah, so I just wanted to get back to the only multiple that makes sense for a company in rapid growth. The only one that anybody could even get their hands around, because these are not the early stage. These are those that have already kind of got some lift off in revenue. Would be some kind of a multiple on revenue, because they are living off investment and stuff at that point. So I'm just kind of curious because some of these venture studios, if you have a portfolio of, if you're going to bat, that's how I've been describing it for a long time. You want to be able to go to bat, because the chance of your first startup or a second one really being a hit is really challenging. But if you're going to bat a number of times, you get one that kind of gets some oxygen in terms of revenue and traction. If you're charging in these consumer apps, $10 a month, you get 1 million users. That's pushing 100 million revenue a year, and then a 10x multiplier would make you a unicorn. 10 times 100 million. So it's more of a revenue at this stage. I would kind of frame it like that. I'm just curious,
Um,
Tyler.
Yeah,
Thanks.
there's
Tyler,
all
two
there's all.
days ago.
Oh, well, he's asking me a question. Hold on. So
Yeah.
the every investors are different geographies. There's different variables. There's different variables in calculating that can influence the multiple. Meaning, your growth rate, if you're growing 10% a month or 20% a month or 30% a month, could that amount of growth could affect your multiple. Where you're based geographically can affect your multiple. The investor themselves, as I mentioned, SoftBank is notoriously pays a higher multiple than anybody. And yeah, how much, and the founder themselves, if they're a particular strong background in that vertical, that can have a strong influence on it. And that's why, for example, this Google dude who just started this new social decentralized social network raised 200 million. How off of nothing? There is no monetization yet raised 200 million. Well, he's raising it from investors that pay a lot. He's raising it in the Valley, which pays the highest multiple, and he's doing it in the crypto space. The vertical you're in also has a huge impact. And to your point, though, social platforms generally take a while to even start messing with revenue. Meaning, for example, Clubhouse is pre-revenue. They're not even focused on revenue yet, honestly. And yet they're valued at $4 billion in their last round, which is a multiple of what? Nothing. So it's maybe a multiple on expected revenue per user on what? They don't even know what the monetization model is going to be. Is it going to be an ad network? Is it going to be? You see what I'm saying? So how did Clubhouse get to a 4 billion valuation? What is that a multiple of exactly? I mean, it was in
I'm
recent.
sure it's probably
Let's call
data,
that what it.
like the data that they're collecting on everyone that's in here.
So let's call that for what it is, which is a good old boy. That's one way to put it. Because if you're raising that kinds of money, so you have an exit. That's great. Tells investors that you've been through the process.
Mhm.
But there are so many things that have to go right for you to find success in this world, right? It's just, if you're raising those kinds of money, it's because you just have a very warm connection to investors. It's not based on any rational investment. Full stop, basically, because it's just too early. Even if you have three rock stars starting the team, that level of investment, right? The
Mhm.
Google one you just mentioned with just
No, but
Right.
if you think, but David, if you think it's like the next great thing, if you kind of recognize that this is going to champ, like in the days of the internet, what everybody recognized, including the most value investors, people who were more conservative, was that the internet was going to be very big. It was going to be transformative. You just didn't know who the winners were, but people wanted to get some bets down on something because you didn't want to be completely naked and have nothing invested in the internet because you knew the internet was going to be big. And some companies ended up being very big, like Amazon. Some companies ended up being kind of smaller, not as big as people thought, like Yahoo. And then other companies, like most of them, actually failed. Like toys.com or pets.com or I mean, you could think of so many other ones. At home. I mean, I actually made money on At Home, even though it went to zero because I knew it was vapor, and I sold it at some point. But I mean, there was a lot of ways to make money, in the internet boom. Even though with a lot of them went to zero and some of them became, really big. And that's just, anytime you have a transformative technology. And if somebody thinks social audio is the next great thing, you have to figure out, is it going to be Clubhouse? Is it going to be Green Room? Is it going to be all the stuff that Spotify is doing? I mean, Spotify is already a big company, but, it could be the stuff that Spotify is doing, despite the fact that they're a big company, might dwarf, Clubhouse. I mean, Clubhouse is going to have to compete with Spotify and Twitter and everybody else.
I
Yeah,
think
Ken.
it,
So
I
there's
think
three. If there's three legs on a stool, right? There's the opportunity, there's the team, and then there's the team demonstrating traction against the opportunities.
mhm.
A lot
Right,
of
but
the
David,
the dot com.
the traction
Can I
with Clubhouse. Go ahead. Yeah.
one moment? Because I was there through all the '90s stuff. I was
Right.
so like a lot of us. All I'm saying, and that was 30 years ago, 20 something years ago. So, the fourth thing, and if you watch this, you'll kind of see it. The fourth thing is when teams have been through the process and you're able to put together a team that's been through the process a few times. That is, I'll give you that, right? Because
Mhm.
they know the process and they're going to be mitigating risks all along the way. But still, the wisdom of on a valuation perspective, because that's where you're negotiating how much value it is versus smoking the peace pipe, right? Is simply to just show me some level of traction. That's all I'm saying. So investors that are going early without any product, without any customer traction whatsoever, they are smoke. Let's just call that early for that high valuation is some pipe smoking. Okay, let's just be honest about that. I mean, these guys in Clubhouse haven't monetized yet. All right. I
okay.
mean,
I
so
think Clubhouse raised 4 billion at the time, whereby the number of
No. They
users
raised
were
400
going up.
million at a 4 billion valuation.
Yeah, 4 billion valuation, yes. So was at a point whereby they have new users, a lot of new users. And also remember, I think it was Twitter, or it's a Facebook or Twitter who which actually offered the same valuation to actually acquire them,
Twitter,
which
yeah.
they declined. Yeah, and then they got the raise, which is good for them. But I think one thing they really have to think seriously is to keep up the usage, because I think the usage is going down. Just now I wanted to raise one point. You saw the article that WeWork wants to go public in October via SPAC, right?
Yes,
That is very interesting for me because they're obviously not making money.
they do. They make a ton of money.
WeWork
WeWork,
during
yes.
COVID? How can they be making
During
money
COVID,
during
not so
COVID?
much. No,
They're not making money.
during COVID, they don't make that much, right?
Okay, and good luck for those people who's going to buy into them.
It
David, I'm
depends.
not justifying these valuations, by the way. I'm just trying to explain how people look at it because they have to, they're trying to, like, say, to figure out some way of investing in something. And you're right, at some point, some number, maybe they shouldn't, but, but this is very similar to what we're seeing to the internet bubble, and it will work out like the internet bubble, which is most of them will fail and most money will be lost, and there'll be some very, very, very large companies coming out of it. I mean, who knows? So I mean, that's just the way it is. I mean,
Yeah. So the Cheryl is teasing another headline, which the headline just came out, that WeWork is set to go public via a SPAC deal in October, 2 years after its disastrous IPO attempt, which they were. No company has ever been closer to a massive IPO at what was it, a 57 billion valuation? And then, boy, did that implode right as they were walking down to Wall Street. And in a huge way. My goodness, that was
that was one of SoftBank's biggest losses, I believe.
Yeah, that was tremendous. Anyway,
By the
so
way, SoftBank just put $1.5 billion. It was in the Financial Times. $1.5 billion into a private equity firm run by former Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin.
So WeWork is planning to join the stock market sometime around October 21st, more than 2 years later after its IPO attempt, which ended in disaster. The shared workspace company agreed in March to go public via a SPAC merger. And the new symbol name will be WE, like WeWork. And the two companies announced upon completion of the transaction, WeWork expects to be under the We ticker. The merger values the co-working giant at $9 billion. That's less than a fifth of the private valuation of $47 billion it secured in 2019, following a $2 billion investment from SoftBank. WeWork first filed for IPO August. The backlash eventually spurred WeWork to shelve its listing. Newman has stepped down. A SPAC is listing as a shell company. Boom, boom, boom. We'll see. We'll see how it goes post pandemic. Yeah.
I don't know where you get the idea that WeWork is profitable, but as of 2019 data,
I didn't say they're profitable. I said they make money.
Yeah, but they are not profitable.
I didn't say they were. Nobody said they were.
So they are going to IPO? I mean, sorry, they're going to go public in October?
Tyler, I think people are confusing terms. You're saying making money as maybe in revenues.
Right.
I think Cheryl's talking about bottom line.
Profitability, yeah.
Yeah, those are two separate things.
Yeah, I'm talking about profitability.
Yeah, very few tech companies are profitable.
But they're going to go public, right?
By the way, they were not trying to be profitable. They never wanted to be profitable. That was never their plan to be profitable.
I think the problem with WeWork is their business model. It's their business model.
Their business model is to not be profitable.
Growth. They want
their business model is to cover the planet and dominate the concept of remote work, third locations where people can go work. And to do that, they are following the same model Amazon's following, which is cover the planet in these co-working spaces. And to do that, you are racing, and every dollar you make, you throw into, you don't take it, you don't want to be profitable. You reinvest every dollar you get into building more buildings so that you cover the whole planet with this big brand of these. It's to build the big global brand of buildings in every city and every, and to do that, you cannot be profitable.
No, they sign long-term lease with buildings.
Yes.
So meaning to say that they have signed very 10-year long lease with buildings, and they have been empty for 2 years.
Yes.
And then not just that, I think the previous founder actually bought the units and let the company pay him as the land
Correct.
owner.
In some cases in New York, yes.
There's a great documentary on this on Hulu if you want to take a look.
Yeah, I watched.
The business model is commercial landlord. That's the business model, but the strategy is the objective is it's land grab, right?
Correct.
Which is exactly as Tyler's saying. And so, but the most not the most, but one important part of this is just SPACs and how they're allowed to draw with a child's pen what their expected revenue is without demonstrating, profits and things like that. So, hey, Ken, can you or somebody just speak to that? Because I think that there was a news article, I think it was last week or earlier this week, Tyler, with regards to the SEC maybe kind of put a little more scrutiny on that.
Yeah,
Thanks.
so Gensler spoke on that, the SEC commissioner. So basically what SPACs under these current rules, because I think 20-something years ago, if I recall, because blank check companies are not new, I don't think they were able to do this, but they are now. They're able to make very extraordinary projections, almost whatever they want, that if a company was going public through a normal IPO, you cannot make those projections, okay? You have to be very circumspect about, things like that. But they're able to make very aggressive projections, and that's one of the things I think they're going to try to crack down, simply because it creates an unfair playing field between SPACs and traditional IPOs. And if their ability to make these projections went away, it would really crimp the SPAC market. So I think that's what we're talking about.
Yeah, the combination of SPAC and WeWork is not a good mix, given Adam Newman's history of being a little unscrupulous, as Charles said, where he was acquiring the land and then, or the buildings himself personally, and then leasing them to WeWork. That's really shady stuff, and he just got greedy. That was a big,
But
I
he's
believe, a big
gone,
part
right?
of it.
Thailand,
Yeah,
they bought him out for a fortune, right? Yeah, yeah.
yes, but I think that ended up kind of peeing in the punch bowl a bit, and it's not so different from the McDonald's story.
Yep.
If you watch that movie, The Founder, with fantastic movie where in the game of real estate, it's whoever owns the land underneath the building, whoever owns the building. And Roy Kroc figured out how to take over from the McDonald's brothers because he was signing up franchises. And they were excited. Oh boy, another McDonald's, another McDonald's, another McDonald's, and but he kept buying all of the real estate underneath all those McDonald's. And so
He had more sound financial principles then, because he didn't
yeah,
have access to all this kind of Wall Street money, so he actually had to make real numbers work.
yeah,
You know.
yep. Okay, so the next big story, we've covered the first two. The next one is Tim Sweeney, CEO of Epic Games, maker of Fortnite, who's leading the big lawsuit against Apple and Google, says that Apple told Epic that Apple will not reinstate Epic's Apple developer account, which is a necessary prerequisite to bringing Fortnite back into the Apple App Store. So they're not going to allow Fortnite to come back into the Apple App Store until all legal appeals have concluded, which will likely take many years. Because
Ouch.
we
So,
saw
Tyler, how much are they going to lose?
which side? They're both going to losing in that scenario.
Yeah, but not Apple, but the other side, because
Epic?
that's...
Yeah.
Epic.
Yeah, we would have to look at how much they were making on Fortnite from the App Store, and over 12 months, and then multiply that out over who knows how long. But
they're on so many other consoles, though, that I don't think that really makes that much of a difference.
I don't know, though. There might be a good number of potential Fortnite users who would have, even if they had it on a console, they want to play it while mom and dad's, out shopping around town or in the car or in the restaurant or what have you. So I could see how, and I think that was a common use case. I think there was a lot of Fortnite users who, some of whom used it exclusively on their Apple device, whether that be an iPad or an iPhone. And then secondly, there was some who, as Annette's saying, primarily use it on a laptop or a console game, like a PlayStation or what have you. But then also when they were at the car wash or, hanging out with the parents at the shopping mall, might have been playing it on their devices. So it's a considerable amount of money. I mean, it's billions of dollars. So,
yeah, but what I'm saying is that whatever you would purchase while you're out shopping, you could just go back home that night and purchase it as well.
Yeah.
They usually have things in the store. I think they last for, I'm not sure if it's 24 or 72 hours, but
yeah. Here's Tim Sweeney's tweet thread where he says, Tim Sweeney's Epic Games CEO founder. Here it is. Yeah, it's a long tweet thread, and he says at the start, Apple lied. Let me make sure this is the start of it. Is that the start of it? It must be. Apple lied. Apple spent a year telling the world and the court and the press they'd welcome Epic's return to the App Store if they agreed to play by the same rules as everyone else. He's right. They did say that. Epic agreed, and now Apple has reneged in another abuse of its monopoly power over 1 billion users. Just last week, Epic agreed with Apple that we would play by the same rules as everyone else. And then he shares a screenshot of the email on September 16th that he sent to Phil Schiller at Apple. Hi, Phil. I'm writing to provide clarity on where we stand. Epic has appealed the court's decision in our suit over Apple's policies, though we can't update the Fortnite version. Though we can't update the Fortnite version that users still have on their iOS devices, we've disabled Epic Payments server side in complying with the ruling and have paid Apple $6 million as ordered by the court. Epic has asked Apple to reactivate our Fortnite developer account. Epic promises that it will adhere to Apple's guidelines whenever and wherever we release products on Apple platforms. If we get the account back, we'll bring Fortnite back to Mac as soon as possible, and we'll reincorporate Fortnite for iOS in our Unreal Engine development and testing process, which will benefit all of our mutual developers. Whether Epic chooses to bring Fortnite back to iOS consumers depends on whether and where Apple updates its guidelines to provide for a level playing field between Apple in-app purchases and other methods of payment. Epic will resubmit Fortnite to the App Store if you adhere to the plain language of our court order and allow apps to include buttons and external links that direct customers to other purchasing mechanisms without onerous terms or impediments to good user experience. In that case, our remaining dispute will be about competing stores, and I genuinely believe we could find common ground on the topic if Apple's position were based solely on user security and privacy rather than commercial interests. Ooh, that's clever. That's super clever, because that's what they claimed. They keep claiming, oh, this is all about users' privacy and security. That's what this is about. This is about it. And then he says, so, if it is what you say it is, and this is all about your position based solely on user security and privacy, and not about commercial interest, not about making money, you greedy fucks, then we got no problem. Right? We're going to do what you said. It's all we're totally taking those problems off the table that you say that this is all about. And if that's true, and it's all about that and not about commercial interest, then there really should be no problem, should there be? But he knows goddamn well that they're greedy fucks and that it's all about the money. So, as a provider of developer tools, Epic continues to support Apple platforms and our mutual developers wholeheartedly. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to talk. So he screenshots that in his second tweet in this tweet thread where he says, just last week, Epic agreed with Apple that it would play by the same rules as everyone else. Fair enough. They did say that. And you are saying that you will do that. So there should be no problem. This is another extraordinary anti-competitive move by Apple, demonstrating their power to reshape markets and choose winners and losers. Great point. That's what monopolies do. It's also a loss for fair competition and consumer choice. The loss of Fortnite as an iOS Metaverse competitor alongside Roblox and PUBG Mobile has significant implications for the evolution of the new medium of our era. He's right about that too. Why did Apple break its promise to allow Fortnite back under its rules? Apple cites 3 reasons. Number 1, they won. Number 2, Epic statements since the court decision. And number 3, the way we launched direct payments in 2020. And so he says, what statements are we talking about here? All Apple cites in a quote they fabricated claimed I said Epic wouldn't trade wouldn't trade an alternative payment system away to get Fortnite back on iOS. What did I actually say? And then he shows the tweet that he actually says. If Apple is now blacklisting companies for making statements, where does that policy lead them? To ban Spotify, Match, and New York Times, which was the other companies who joined Epic in testimony in this lawsuit, where Spotify makes its own and Match made their own statements in the case as witnesses that Apple does abuse its kind of position in the App Store. Fortnite should not be blacklisted, and so his point is if you're banning us for making statements, if that's why you're banning us now, is because I made some statements. Well, Spotify made statements, Match.com made statements, which is Tinder. New York Times made statements, so will you be banning them too? What are you actually banning us about? Because we're complying now. So why are you not putting us back in your store, Apple?
Tyler, the thing is it's just like at a restaurant. They just point to that sign. We reserve
right
the
to refuse service.
Anybody. I mean, literally, that's what it boils down to at this point. And they're just playing nice.
Right. If they have that, by the way, that's a great point, Chris, because Apple, I wonder if what the details of that is. Does Apple actually have somewhere a right to refuse service policy? And if so, Will they tell Tim Sweeney, hey, Tim, we don't like your face. You're not welcome in our store. They can't really do that because of the, playing fair nature monopoly. I'm assuming, it's going to get very litigious on that point if they. Interesting. Fortnite should not be blacklisted for challenging an agreement containing terms the court found to be unlawful, which Apple forces all the developers as terms of access to iOS. We'll fight on. The need for regulatory and legislative action is clearer than ever before. So it's kind of escalated now. This little backyard, schoolyard, after school skirmish is getting even hotter.
This is where like a Jennifer or one of the lawyers in here would help. What constitutes a tort?
Whew, man, what a big, crazy lawsuit this is. And does Apple have rights to just not allow somebody in their store just because they don't want to? Because that seems to be what they're doing now.
Doesn't Apple have that right now? I mean, a lot of smaller developers, that create apps are rejected by Apple, aren't they?
Yes.
And they don't really have to give a reason and say, here's the causes for cure that'll get you into the App Store. I think it's pretty just, hey, one-sided. You guys don't meet our whatever security or whatever our policies are, and we're going to reject it.
Well, I mean, it goes back to that like Russian app also, right? That they could just pull whatever they want whenever they want, regardless of the situation. I know it's a different context as far as, the government getting involved with that one, but they could put whatever they want on their platform and pull whatever they want off their platform.
Right, and probably the add-on there is going to be their developer terms of service, and they may not have to point to a specific issue and say you have to fix this, but it's the same as Facebook or anything else, right?
Yes, well, there's an interesting point here, which Epic did sort of bring this on themselves in a way from the start by circumventing Apple's policies by allowing a payment method for users to go direct. Apple doesn't allow that.
That's it right there, Tyler. You can be rejected from the App Store for violating the TOS of your developer agreement. Period.
And now Tim is saying,
absolutely. Epic did do that and brought that on themselves. Exactly. I mean,
right. Epic breached the agreement, and so Apple, not only removed the app from the store, but removed their developer account. And now Tim's saying, okay, but that's all been addressed. Now the court has said X, and now everyone's going to comply, and you're going to do what you say you always do. We're going to do. We're no longer going to be in violation of your policies, so it's all good, right?
No, but that's the whole point, Tyler. And exactly is that's they breach the agreement, get booted, but that's the whole point. Is Apple a monopoly? In which case they would not be allowed to exclude them, or are they not a monopoly? In which case they can do whatever they want on their platform, which they can do right now. So they don't have to let you back on. I mean, these guys are publicizing it, making it a media fight as well, which is smart. But it's Apple's choice.
Another piece to this is the Unreal Engine behind the curtain. That's one of the more popular engines, or the most popular engines that game developers use. That and Unity. So any kind of an effect that this has with Epic's core business, aside from this game title, is relevant. If not having a developer account affects that development, because they reportedly, from sources I know that are there, this metaverse has seen lots of new exciting things, and it's pretty obvious to imagine that Epic, with its Unreal and just legacy of expertise in gaming, has some big metaverse plans that they're trying to bring to market. So that's actually something that's not specifically part of that headline or anything, but that's like a big deal here as well. How does it affect that?
So apparently, the nitty gritty of the agreement, MG Siegler, who used to be a journalist for TechCrunch and now he became a VC for Google, says, I continue to believe that despite what they're saying, Epic got what they wanted from the case, what they reasonably could hope to get on the PR front. Steering was icing on the cake. And Apple also thinks, despite what they're saying, that Epic got what they wanted. Read that way, this is the logical extension on both sides. Epic applies to go back despite appealing, because why not? And Apple says, screw you. But this is where Epic obviously also has the upper hand. Apple can't win this PR battle, nor afford to. Epic will be back. And he made another really interesting point where he says that the policy is they can ban you if you broke their policies, which they broke, so they can be banned. So they've been banned. So Apple's under no legal pressure to unban them. They violated, they were banned. There's no legal pressure to force Apple to unban them, their developer account. So yeah, Apple's within their rights to keep them unbanned for as long as they wish. And so Apple's saying we're going to keep your account banned until all the appeals have shaken out, which could be for years. Really interesting. Okay, next big one.
Hi there.
Yes.
Tyler, can you check the hand raise first?
Okay, thank you. Here we go.
Tyler, wouldn't it make sense for Epic to get a negotiator and say that, okay, we'll not carry on with the appeal, drop everything, and get back and do business?
I don't know. I mean, Tim doesn't seem like that kind of person. Tim seems to be like a real American, like very invites these kinds of scenarios. I don't think he's interested in resolving it in that kind of that's very Swedish, what you're proposing, and Tim seems very non-Swedish.
Yeah, Tim is a very interesting character. Like, I did some work with Epic Games back in 2015, and their roadmap of kind of what they saw back then to what it is now, the Metaverse, they have a really good portfolio. They've expanded to entertainment, to industry like manufacturing. They have various support revenue streams. So they've definitely diversified. And I think the Apple Store conflict here, there's enough companies on their side that I think the calculus of the battle is actually in their favor long term. Although short term, I think Apple has a lot of recourses like, hey, we're just not going to let you back on until we figure out the stuff with the lawyers, which they should have expected, but it is kind of a shitty move. And that is, again, a sort of evidence for the abuse of monopoly position. So it just works in his favor long term. Short term, it sucks for all the users on iOS devices.
Excuse me for bringing it up, but ain't there shareholders that might have a say in what kind of fiddle with their money they want to take, since the Apple market is such a huge one for them? I would say that the board probably could sack him and say, oh, we got rid of the clown. Could we please go back now?
Who? Tim? Tim is the clown in your scenario?
The CEO of
yeah,
the
he's the
company.
majority shareholder too, though, so it's not.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Tim has made more money for Apple shareholders than anyone in the history of any company in the world. So I don't think the board's
no more
anything but
innovation.
delighted.
No more innovation, though.
It's about money.
Unreal? Is it not innovation?
You're talking about two different Tims. Both CEOs are named Tim.
Or Tim Cook or Tim Sweeney?
Oh, sorry. I thought it's Apple team.
Yeah, we kind of glossed over both of them there.
Okay. Next one up is from Wall Street Journal's Facebook file series. Is Facebook's biggest crisis since Cambridge Analytica, using data Facebook itself produced to highlight its impact on users. How the company found itself in the biggest crisis since Cambridge Analytica. A week ago, the Wall Street Journal began publishing. So now other publishers are talking about the Wall Street Journal's Facebook file series that we covered every day last week. And Jeff Horowitz, who's the kind of main instigator, is retweeting this article talking about his Facebook file series. I'd love it if you're right, Casey Newton. Most Facebook scandals come and go, but this one feels different than Facebook scandals of the past because it has been led by Facebook's own workforce. Interesting point. It's based on insider information.
Yeah, Tyler, he's been making the interview circuit, and these these people, I guess he's been covering Facebook for a couple of years, and he said that basically people are started to come to him because they're just so disillusioned with what Facebook was doing. So he doesn't see this ending. I mean, he's still accepting information. It's not all coming from like one person, right? It's coming from multiple sources, and he checks it and cross checks it. So there's probably more to come.
A weird little soft prediction is I can see this expanding to Google. So there's a version of this happening at Apple simultaneously, but it's a variation where our friend Ashley Gojic was collecting horror stories from coworkers. She's not a journalist. So what was she going to do? Publish them herself on a blog or something? It seemed like she was collecting them and then waving them. We've got 500 of them was what she was saying. And of course, journalists are like, can I have a look at those 500 horror stories from current and former Apple employees? We would love to write, But it seemed like Ashley was trying to use that as a sort of weapon in her negotiations with Apple. And anyway, so that's what I mean. It's a variation. There's people internally sharing nightmare stories, but it's really better done by a journalist. And in this case, it seems Jeff Horowitz is kind of exclusively focused on taking down Facebook with his stories. But I imagine there could be other if a journalist were to do a similar move for Apple or Google or Amazon, I bet they could. And I bet that might happen. I can imagine other journalists are trying to now replicate what Jeff's doing with Facebook with those other big companies. So the next, it says Senator Marsha Blackburn says Wall Street Journal's Facebook Files whistleblower has turned over documents and plans to reveal their identity at some point down the line. Oh, snap. Wow, getting juicy. Countdown to the book deal. Yeah. So they could really monetize things if they decide to write a book. And I wonder if that was part of the agreement with Jeff Horowitz is, I'll leak this stuff to you, but I maintain all rights to write a book about it. Amazing. Anyway, next one is that Discord is testing something called Watch Together, a feature that lets Discord members broadcast YouTube videos inside of Discord, which happens to come just after Google forced the shutdown of two popular music bots on Discord, which were just piping in the music. But now they're watching the videos together. So Discord Music returns, sort of. Discord is testing YouTube integration, which will allow Discord users to watch and comment on videos together. And
do you like Discord, Tyler? Do you use it?
I don't use it.
Okay. Anyone like it?
Good question. Anyone a big fan of Discord?
It's good.
It's good.
Yeah, no strong opinions there.
I've started using it just a little bit, but I can't say that it's sticking to me.
Yeah, it's really as ugly user experience in my opinion.
Yes.
Kind of crappy. I
I
don't know
like
why.
Discord.
Yeah.
It's good from an admin perspective.
So
I
this Discord
found
has got.
Slack to be better when it comes to
Slack is
yes.
much better for sure.
Yeah.
I agree with that. But as far as getting user engagement for people outside of your organization and being able to work with them, it could be a little cleaner, but it's pretty good for what it is at this point.
Okay, the next one is USA Today. Industry groups representing big tech are suing Texas over a law. Well, specifically the big tech of the social media platforms, Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter, are suing Texas because Texas has a new law that lets anyone who's been kicked off of the social media platforms sue the social media platforms for being deplatformed. So if you've been kicked off of Twitter or YouTube or Facebook, and Charles lives in Texas, and Charles has been kicked off of Twitter, so now Charles could sue Twitter. And so now Twitter and Facebook and YouTube are getting together and suing Texas over this one. It's a really
Is he
interesting.
still banned from Twitter?
Yeah.
No. Oh right.
Yes.
Okay.
By the way, so is Michael, who joins us, has been banned from Twitter.
What
Charles
was
is
it
one surprises me, right?
that
Because he's just
Is it
got
because of
some.
the BLM?
Yeah, Michael's was because there was some what was her name? Marjorie Taylor Greene or some kind of white supremacist, Southern Republican was spouting something on Twitter, and he didn't take it very well. So,
Oh, Tyler, I just saw Nicholas in the room and Carl.
Carl
Mr. Davis.
Carlson,
Carl.
Carter.
got to use
But
it.
on why was Charles banned, Tyler? I know he's got some firm views,
Charles
but
was the
they're
opposite. Charles was similar but different. It was a one of the guys who's quite strong in the Black Lives Matter movement, and Charles implied it would be a shame if somebody took you out, or if somebody created a fund to take you out, and using that terminology as an invocation of violence, or so. And Twitter
okay.
takes invocations of violence towards individuals rather seriously, and I believe Michael's was similar in that regard.
The
Like,
story is not is not that. The story are the legislators in Austin that are going full assault on a myriad of issues. This is one arrow of a whole quiver of nonsense that they've been shoving through the Texas legislation.
that too. Well, and to a little further to that point, it's a great point that you make, which is these Texas politicians are also setting themselves up for their presidential campaign, in the next presidential campaign, where it'll be, who knows if Joe Biden will run again, and who knows if Trump will run again. If Trump doesn't run again, this governor of Texas is certainly in the front running, and it's assumed this is why he's doing it, is he wants to be able to run as a presidential candidate for the Republicans, saying that he's against big tech, and how the big tech is the enemy of the people, and they're silencing all of us as Republicans, and so I'm going to fight back and really stick it to them, and as evidenced by my law in Texas.
Oh, you mean that guy who
Abbott's
banned abortion is going to run for president?
Yes.
Yes, of course. I mean
I love when non-Americans are confused by American politics. Like, what? This makes no sense.
The opposite day.
The tone in Cheryl's voice is like, huh?
Then in Japanese it'll be
Yeah.
Hey, Cheryl, what do you think?
Eh?
What do you think Ronald Reagan and both George Bush's their view on abortion was, and they all got elected. So
it's a two-party system. That's the pro and con. You have
Yes.
those are for and against. That's pretty much it.
And Ken, that was decades ago. America has changed a lot, right? I mean, the thing is, and Robert Reich kind of he cited some Yale study that not just the GOP, the left is responsible as well in D.C. There are a host of issues that they do not vote in line with the public. Abortion is one of them, where the people in D.C., those in power, just vote on lobby interests and things like that. So it's one of it is the one of a few things that has been strangling our democracy for decades.
if America had changed that much, quite frankly, Texas, which is our second biggest state, wouldn't be passing an anti-abortion law. This country's still very divided on a lot of things, and that's just one of them. And I'm not even making a case one way or the other. I'm just giving you the political analysis that opposition to abortion is probably not a fatal flaw to getting elected president in this country, given our
Because we
politics.
have 50 states. Every state has very different constituency.
Even Trump was technically on the record, even though he lied about it because he was always pro-choice when he lived in New York. But when he ran for president, he said he was against abortion, and he won. He also won in
Yeah,
2016.
you couldn't get the nomination for president without being
That's right.
anti-abortion.
Of either party, you couldn't get the Democratic nomination unless you're pro-choice, and you can't get the Republican nomination unless you're against it. And that's why even some Democrats who have run for president in the past, even though people should say it's years ago, Dick Gephardt, who was the House Democratic leader, switched his position on abortion because he was one of the few Democrats against abortion, but he switched his position when he wanted to run for president. That is our politics in this country.
Totally
think
agreed.
for non-Americans, the best way to describe it is a sorting algorithm, and you only need to ask one of three questions to sort 80% of the voting population, and pro-life, pro-choice is one of them that sorts. And so if you can sort 80% of the population, you only have to focus on the 20% remainder, and that remainder typically splits according to the Pareto principle, which is 80-20. And then the art that was demonstrated by Brad Parscale and the Trump team in using Cambridge Analytica, and that was well established by Channel 4 in 2020, is then you use the tricks of the hedge fund business with the remaining 4 or 5%, and you effectively demotivate groups like as happened to the African American community, which was demotivated from voting at all. And that's sort of a classic long short hedge fund strategy. And that's how they won the prior election cycle. And they were using, obviously, Facebook to do that. And furthermore, you'll be interested to know that Charles was funded by none other than Peter Thiel, your friendly Facebook board member. So I think people need to be aware of this simple mathematics that enables democracy to be gamed by sophisticated players.
So that's very sophisticated. I would love to revisit all of that because that sounds awesome. Just to kind of think through that casting of it. My point is systemically the national population. If you poll them, they will poll at 50 plus 60, 70 points a number of these key issues, a very clear direction. If you as you go down to the state level, sure. I haven't seen any kind of a Texas state poll that says that Texas is pro life. I'm sure it
Yeah,
exists
I
somewhere.
said,
So,
Dave,
but
that
but
there
the
are
point,
three questions you need.
Nicholas, the point is this. I mean, I love your analysis. I'm really intrigued by it, and I like to learn. I like to check it out. All I'm saying is that here we've got state rights, and we have to determine what becomes federal law and policy, and that's kind of the challenge. That's part of that's what makes us. We're not a democracy. We're what do they call it? Whatever. We're a
Republic.
republic. Yeah. So thanks. So in any case, the point is we were not getting represented properly by due to the lobby pressure. That was my point, and that's kind of one of the big systemic problems. Thanks. I'm sorry. I'm done
I,
speaking.
Nicholas, what did
I
Peter
totally agree
Thiel?
with you, David, on that. And it should be noted that out of the $7 trillion it costs to run the government, corporations pay a mere $340 billion of the tax take and write, because of K Street and lobbying, most of the laws because the elected population is not necessarily capable. I did mention, say, three questions. So the way that you run the sorting algorithm is effectively on pro-life, pro-choice, sorting one. Sorting number two is Second Amendment, gun control, etc. And the third question is around immigration. So once you can effectively ask those three questions, you will create enough sorting to determine who are the swing voters, and then you motivate or demotivate their actions. That's how the exploit worked in 14 through 16.
Thank you. It's people decide emotionally. So by focusing on the emotional issues, that makes 1,000% sense. Thank you for sharing that. I appreciate that.
Can I ask a quick question
Nicholas,
about that? Wait,
go
just
ahead.
one quick
Go ahead.
question. Sorry.
Go ahead,
Thanks,
Alexander. Go
Ken.
ahead. Yeah.
Just is that
sorting algorithm designed to pick out who is influential, as in that kind of a swing vote, or swing vote as in they're on the fence? Like, do they rate the quality of the
What you
people?
want to do is you want to create a basket through the sorting. So all you need to do is imagine a reflection. So you'll post something. Let's say if you're doing it on Facebook, you'll use a sock puppet account, and you'll post something that is egregiously anti-immigration. All Mexicans are, XYZ. And all the people that agree with that, effectively, you don't need to target anymore because you know which way they're going. And similarly, you'll say the same with pro-life, pro-choice, right? And so you bucket the people that you don't need to waste money on. And then once you get to the buckets, you start with large buckets, and then you get to small buckets. And when you get to the small buckets, you know that you need more nuanced arguments. So the purpose of this point was because people were saying, they were surprised about pro-life, pro-choice being, a sorting algorithm. But if you can't agree with that, you're going to agree with other people that have other views, and that's what creates the skew in our voting system, which is why we have an endemic problem, because you can't get over or you can't agree on certain issues because you've been sorted out before you can find that you have 95% in common with that other person. So it creates polarization between the right and the left when we agree about 95% of things. And it's the 5% issue, which is I'm pro-life, or I'm pro-choice, or I'm pro-immigration, or I'm anti-immigration, or I'm pro-gun, or anti-gun. And that, of course, is actually plays into the system because, like I think David said, you've got a federal and a state system. So it creates stability through its sorting algorithm in a way, but it has a lot of bias involved, and it can be gamed if you can change the perceptions through large-scale media that enables you to see who believes what. And that's what happened on Twitter, and that's what happened on Facebook. And it's happening all the time, and we know it's happening all the time because we meet it in our daily lives where people believe things that have no basis in objective truths, but they've chosen that that's their belief and that's their right.
It sounds like the ordering matters. So it's when the ordering when the sorting happens, in what sequence do you try to group these people together? Because if you do some of the more polarizing sorting to begin with, you lose out the more common data points afterwards. Is that a fair summary?
Yeah, you want to ask the easiest questions first, or you can say the most outrageous things, and those who agree with you become obvious, people not to waste money on. If you're thinking about using Facebook as an exploit weapon, which, of course, as I said before, the person that was banned from this room was funded by one of the most important board members across most of Silicon Valley's technocracy.
Doesn't Facebook already have a lot of this information and have people? I remember years ago Zuckerberg, when he was, when he was pitching this to companies for advertising, he's like, geez, the demographics, we can get down to, white male in the suburbs who, who's hard right, blah, blah, blah. I would think, and I know that Pascal, you mentioned him, Pascal, he worked closely with Facebook, who helped him in the first election, basically do the targeting that they needed to win that election, or at least to convince the folks they needed to on Facebook.
They're getting a
Elections are
lot
not
deeper than
free and
white male in the
fair if you're
suburbs. Yeah, they're getting way deeper. That algorithm is as you're getting to that, it's a very deep on your beliefs, not just white male in the suburbs, right? And they're very able to target any communications, advertising, etc.
Yeah.
And also then bring that around to it's a layered approach, which is what they did, which was layering it so that you're then put into communities with like-minded people, so that you don't feel like an individual. You're like, oh yes, we all believe this, we're normal. Yeah, and they kept layering that up, and that's why it was so effective as well.
The cohorts reinforce the echo chamber so that they get messages that demotivate them. So basically, and this was well proven, Brad Parscale and the Trump team understood that African Americans were upset about or were made to feel upset about the Bernie situation, and then were demotivated from voting in key areas. So you keep sending people negative messages. That's what I meant when I said the hedge fund approach. That's why Bob Mercer, who's a partner of Jim Simons at Renaissance Technologies, who understood this very well, that you can short markets as well as go long markets when you're in an information arena. And yes, you get sorted into cohorts, which Hillary Clinton very inelegantly referred to as a basket of deplorables, but they did understand that this sorting algorithm was creating cohorts, which should not have been referred to as baskets of deplorables
Well,
because
in addition, Nicholas, just to reiterate what you're saying for people, is one, they can guide your behavior, so they can target you with certain communications that will appeal to you, and then amplify your beliefs. So if you believe something, they'll start serving you
right,
things that amplify that belief, and you go down that rat hole into your cohorts. But and as you said, it's not just that, it's whatever behavior they're going to do. And as you said, they did things to demotivate African Americans from voting. So not even just to believe one way or the other, but to actually demotivate you from
correct,
voting. And then the other is like, if you're, it's not even just that, it's things like if you're a blue collar worker, you know, teachers union, butchers union, all these people, you feel a certain way, we're going to, so do your neighbors, you know, you're justified in this, you're part of a community, as you say, the community, your
right.
cohorts.
So
And
that's
so
how they
they,
use
yeah.
your identity data. So this is why information and identity, as you know, I always moan on about this, is so important, and why it can't be issued to you by login with Facebook, login with Apple, login with XYZ ID that's provided by a corporation or a government. You need to own this yourself, because the data that you're giving out just through your interaction is sufficient to sort you into an echo chamber that will affect your perceptions without you knowing. And so the real danger of this type of technocracy that runs our system and affects our capitalism as they move into money and healthcare is that, and our societies, is that they know more than you because they have the collective data, and it's our inability to see the crowd that it influences us, because we are, as humans, mimetic, which means we copy each other. We have a model, and then people follow them, which is someone like Elon or someone like Andreessen, is that if they say it's good, everyone else goes, well, they're much smarter than me, so I better go along with them, and you buy up the stock, or you buy up the coin, or you buy up whatever it is. And essentially, you're outsourcing your free will and your agency to the group. So if they know more about the group than you do, and you are programmed to follow alpha group leaders, you're going to end up in the thrall of people with control of money and
Nicholas,
power.
and to simplify some of that for the audience, so you're also going to be, so what it's also highlighting, their thing is that you're finding people's unconscious biases and amplifying them, right? So if somebody has a slight tint towards, you know, anti-abortion or racism or anything else, and then amplifying it, or we're, you know, anti-immigration, it gets
You are
amplified. And
controlling people's
right,
perceptions.
right. It's right. They're controlling it, and by doing that, it's not just these leaders. You're getting funneled into where much of your information given to you is going to be more and more of that. So you're like, yes, see, everybody thinks this, or it's the norm, versus you're really going down a rat hole. So, or it being amplified, as you said, and they are definitely doing. They know more about you in the whole, not just what you're looking at, and if people don't understand how complicated these algorithms are and what they can tell about you, but what you're looking at, but what time of day you look at it, how long you look at something, all of those are
They
extremely
know
relevant.
more about you than you know about yourself, 100%, and
There
they
was
have
a great
exploited
example,
this
yeah,
repeatedly.
hugely, and then they layer it as again, and it's incredibly sophisticated. So you
Then
know,
they layer in the dopamine and the intermittent feedback, and basically just exploit every psychological exploit that we developed in the 80s to trick everyone into consumerism.
100%. I mean, you've got whole majors on this at many schools. But anyways, it's extremely sophisticated, and so it's just to be, as Nicholas is pointing out, people need to be much more aware of this. People still think it's just the you're going to get served the Nordstrom's ad because you went on that site, and I'm like, that's the lowest level um, denominator. Your whole belief systems are being guided.
It's emotional warfare that's being done on our minds without any kind of engagement by our government. It's
Well,
ridiculous. It's not just
our
one moment.
government
One
is
moment.
Government
One,
doesn't
engaging.
one,
understand it, though.
one
That's
moment.
legal. They're
One.
so far behind.
Hey.
They're decades behind, David, to your
So
point.
so so yeah. So we're all kind of like saying that's spot on, I think. So, and it doesn't just happen here in America. This is a platform that there's a bunch of other anecdotes of how it's done.
Yeah, Nikhil just texted me to say it was done in India, which we obviously know, and that's how they got Modi. It's very clear that the government is involved in this because Mark Zuckerberg, as was recently publicized, was taken to the Trump White House by Peter Thiel and was entertained with Jared Kushner. And it was given certain undertakings, as we're given to understand. So they are very well aware of how to do this. And you need to look at every message in the light of who is it trying to sort for. That's what you need to ask yourself. Who are they trying to sort out? Who are they trying to separate? Because that's the whole thing. It's a sorting algorithm.
And if I might, I got a back channel from someone, and without saying who it was, they were just reminding me that the reason why lots of the executives don't leave Facebook is they've got millions and bazillions of dollars kind of at stake. Golden, not even golden parachute. That's keeping them there. So, Zuckerberg's the head of a group, and then the number of others that are kind of complicit or not is just
Right.
part of our
David,
challenge.
if you've ever
So
worked
this
in
is where we talk
politics, it's
about meme
power. No,
kings.
it's power, David. It's not just money at stake, which is because a lot of these people, especially executives, they have more money than they're ever going to spend, right? So it's the power when they get into this,
Agreed.
and they themselves are manipulated into it, or not even manipulated. I mean, it's power. It's going
It's
down this and going, well, no, we really are not doing something bad. This really is good, or this really is X. I mean, their whole beliefs change. And if you deal with politics or super high level CEOs, you'll see all of this different thinking.
But there's no hiding this at all. This is the strategy of surveillance venture capitalists. They hire people directly out of government, as we've seen in the crypto industry, with all of the regulators have gone to the corporations that they were supposed to regulate, and then they disappear quite quickly afterwards, which I don't, I don't profess to understand that perfectly. But if you look at, all of the way that the situation works, not just Zuckerberg, there are people who crave power and are in powerful positions in certain camps. You've got the Google camp, you've got the Apple camp, you've got the Facebook camp, the Amazon camp, the Andreessen camp, and then you've got the decentralized camp, which consists of very few. There's Bitcoin. Ethereum is not decentralized, sorry, everybody, and nor is XRP or any of those others. And there are other projects that have been, fashioned in the same way as Bitcoin. But that's what we're going to be left with, because all of those other companies, as Coinbase found out, are going to be regulated by the government. And when you're going to get regulated by the government in respect of money, that's going to touch everything to do with your identity, and that is going to be served to them by those companies. That's why you've got Twitter with Square and Jack, etc. These guys are setting up to be the oligarchs of the future, and they are backed by the very same people that are hiring regular Joes who are earning good money. And you get people like Nick Clegg, who was deputy prime minister, that created the whole Brexit disaster. Well, was basically part of the whole Brexit disaster. And that was also an exploit. That was the same Cambridge Analytica were at work in that sorting algorithm. And we have to understand that these people are willing executioners. They pretend that they don't understand it, or maybe they don't understand it. Maybe they're just so craven to the money that when they leave being deputy prime minister and get paid millions of dollars, and then they're coming and talking about culture. This is where we're at, that they're either doing it on purpose or they're not smart enough to know they're being used. But the people who are really understand the system, like Andreessen, like Jack, like Elon, know that this is the battle for the third wave of the web, where information makes you have godlike powers, especially when you're talking about billions of cohorts. It's very, very dangerous for civil society, in my opinion.
And more mental health is going to be needed on this. I have never met so many people in the last 5 years with anxiety, thinking that the world is falling apart. And this is probably the best time in the world to live as a human being.
Yes, you need to stimulate fear, because fear using the science that they know and is processed through the hypothalamus, the pituitary, and the adrenal gland, and we're much more attuned for fear than attuned for love. And so it's much easier to make people afraid because they will move into their cohort more aggressively. So you sort people more aggressively by sowing fear than by promoting love.
Right, and it's also exactly as you're saying, it's divisive. So a lot of these people don't care which cohort they sort you down. It's all about creating divisiveness. Us, them, us, them.
Okay. Okay. Youch. So the next headline here is from the Washington Post. California Governor Gavin Newsom signs a new bill requiring Amazon and other employers to disclose the use of productivity quotas and more, coming into effect January 1st. Gavin Newsom says the new law, which targeted Amazon, will protect workers and give them the dignity, respect, and safety they deserve.
I think this is going to lead to more automation.
California
I'm
became...
going to wonder, we all have productivity quotas. You always have some kind of a measurement in a company. I mean, lawyers have, their 2,400 hours.
No, the point is that they have to be transparent about it, because what the Amazon employees are saying is, we have no idea how we're being measured against, our productivity, and they want more transparency exactly about, because what the Amazon employees are trying to show is they believe that they're being penalized for going to the bathroom, and they want the transparency of the system that they're being measured against, which will then force Amazon to reveal that in fact they are being penalized for going to the bathroom, if that makes sense.
It makes sense in the sense that I'll throw in my 2 cents, that it's just good management to tell your employees what their objective is. That's HP way, buddy. MBO, management by objective. So if they are concealing anything like that, that's, another brick in the wall to just demonstrate how poorly managed Amazon is, although the PR engine around the idea that they're well managed is so powerful.
So the California became the... Go ahead.
Now, there's plenty of reasons. Now, I get the moral reason why people would want to know this, but just expect the manufacturers and other industry to push back, even though Amazon and these guys are being targeted, because there's concern about that stuff.
It says California became the first state to curtail the use of productivity quotas in warehouses by companies such as Amazon over concerns that they drive up workplace injuries and indignities, like shitting your pants or something. Governor Gavin Newsom signed a bill Wednesday afternoon that requires warehouse companies to disclose production quotas to their workers and prohibits the use of algorithms that can lead workers to skip taking state-mandated breaks or using the bathroom when needed. You were laughing, but you thought I was joking. I was not. Did you want me to read that sentence again?
No, I believe you.
It prohibits the use of algorithms that can lead workers to skip taking state-mandated breaks or skip using the bathroom when needed. The bill
So what you could say is that they are preventing them using humans as robots, because until now they are programming them using optimization algorithms from a management perspective. So they are completely, that's what they're saying essentially.
The bill also bars productivity metrics that prevent workers from complying with the state's health and safety laws. The new law, which goes into effect January 1, also protects workers from being fired or retaliated against for failing to meet an unsafe quota. Well, the key word in that sense is unsafe, because the lawyers will have a field day with that one. And it allows them the ability to sue to block unsafe quotas or flight retaliation. Here's the quote: "We cannot allow corporations to put profit over people," Newsom said in a statement signing the measure into law. "The hardworking warehouse employees who have helped sustain us during these unprecedented times should not have to risk injury or face punishment as a result of exploitative quotas that violate basic health and safety. The measure," he said, "gives workers the dignity, respect, and safety they deserve, and advancing California's leadership on the forefront of workplace safety." Well, you just lost the Amazon warehouses. They're going to move to the to Nevada, to Las Vegas, just on the other side of the border.
I think you also have to think about automation there, Tyler, because
Yeah.
if you saw the recent news that Kroger's did a deal with Ocado to build 10 Ocado distribution centers. Ocado was founded back in
Instacart as well.
2000.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so they're going to get rid of the humans. So all
Well,
you're
even better. I have a better one.
that's what's coming. So the jobs are going to get lost by virtue of the law.
We know you're correct because we saw a very interesting piece yesterday. One of the most interesting pieces we've ever seen, which was a Bloomberg piece, if I recall correctly. Was it Bloomberg? It was Bloomberg or AP or one of the very high level outlets. And this was no ordinary Bloomberg piece about Amazon. This was a tour with a not your normal photographer, like a full on, 2 foot, half meter lens photographer with like the full photography package and kit and lighting and assistant and light meters and the whole shebang, doing a tour of Amazon's flagship facility next to their HQ outside of Seattle. And the whole point of this article is, do you notice something that's missing from this futuristic warehouse that Amazon has next to their HQ outside of Seattle? Lots of photos.
Employees.
There were no people in any of the fucking photos. And they made a point to say exactly this. This is the factory of the future. Here it is. Notice there's no people in them.
This is how the game is played, because what you do is you stimulate this legislation, and at the same time it creates the inability for anyone to compete with people because they've got the technology that enables them to remove the human cost.
But this is the future of every factory. I mean, this isn't just Amazon who happens to be leading the charge.
No, I know, but it's amazing to see Amazon at the time when they know, and we've seen the headlines here. We've discussed the articles and the headlines when unions are trying to unionize Amazon warehouses, and a court just ruled that they're going to be able to retry a vote that happened at one of their warehouses. And what do you know? Amazon reaches out to Bloomberg and says, "Hey, you busy tomorrow? You want to come down and do a tour of our new fully automated factory and bring your best cameraman with you, by the way, because we really want to show in real perfect high fidelity the absolute lack of people in this warehouse. So make sure you got a good lens."
This is people playing the meta game, right? That this is regulatory capture. This is what's going to happen with all this antitrust. It's going to regulate in place because they're going to say to the shareholders, we can't compete with this because effectively it puts our cost up to X, and therefore it makes sense for us to automate. And that is going to happen. You're right.
By the way, Amazon has been revealed by journalists often make note of the fact, and we've covered this here going back a few months. Amazon has a database of the journalists who have written good articles, friendly articles, and unfriendly articles about Amazon. So who do you think they reached out to about that piece we read yesterday? And you know what we should do? We should get the name of whoever wrote that story yesterday, who got a tour of Amazon's factory, and do a Google search for their previous articles about Amazon. I guarantee you they are not critical articles of Amazon, and nor was this one. And why would Amazon reach out to Bloomberg and give them a tour of their factory? It's a really weird move. Unless it's, for the obvious reasons that we're discussing, which is they're spooking off and sending a very strong signal to the unions. Don't even fucking try it.
And that's why Newsom is legislating essentially as a union would try to advocate for legislating, because they are essentially looking after workers' rights by saying you have to pay them a minimum of this and you can't set numbers that are not unrealistic. This is what would normally be negotiated by a union.
But by the way, I should point out that the California law, Amazon didn't even put up a tremendous resistance. Most of the resistance came from smaller businesses. So there's a lot of other businesses that are impacted by this than Amazon. In fact, their biggest complaint is that this law was basically targeting supposedly Amazon, but it's impacting them, and they're not in the same position as Amazon.
Exactly
So,
right.
Exactly what I was saying.
And that's what happened with Uber and the gig workers here in California with whatever it was called.
AB5.
AB5. Well, thank you. And so this is regulatory capture. This is exactly how the big boys it looks like the government's going against them, but what it's doing is it's destroying everyone else down the value chain. This is exactly how you play the meta game, where you do exactly what Tyler's saying, is you get your friendly people to give a PR view of the future that shows, this, and that threatens people. And it's, they're in a game with these politicians, and they know that they will make actions that will actually help them in the long run that look like they're going against them. Optically, it looks like this is bad for Amazon, but really it's destroying the competition.
So the article says Amazon did not was not immediately respond to a request for comment, Cheryl.
Oh, 59.
And while the law doesn't specifically name Amazon, its author, Democratic Assembly Lorena Gonzalez, made it clear that curtailing the company's practices were at the heart of the measure. Amazon's business model relies on enforcing inhumane work speeds that are injuring and churning through workers at a faster rate than we've ever seen. Gonzalez said in a statement, "Workers aren't machines. We're not going to allow a corporation that puts profits over workers' bodies to set labor standards back decades just for same-day delivery." The new law comes as Amazon faces criticism over the way it tracks warehouse workers' productivity. Workers have complained that the company, which uses computers that show employees how many items they've stowed, picked, and packed in an hour, pressures them to make rate. Missing those targets can lead managers to write up workers. A blemish on the record can make it difficult to advance and can even lead to firings. A Washington Post investigation of worker-related injury data from the Occupational Safety and Health Administration in June found that since 2017, Amazon reported a higher rate of serious injury incidences that caused employees to miss work or be shifted to light-duty tasks. "We don't set unreasonable performance goals," Bezos wrote in a letter to shareholders in April, in which he addressed work safety issues. "We set achievable performance goals that take into account tenure and actual employee performance." State of the California law isn't the only effort by lawmakers targeting Amazon. Earlier this month, Senator Kirsten Gillibrand, Democrat from New York, sent a letter to the head of the U.S. Equal Employment Opportunity Commission urging the agency to investigate Amazon's systemic failure to provide adequate accommodations for pregnant warehouse employees. The letter cites cases in which Amazon didn't modify job duties or allow reasonable time off. Okay. Next up.
Well, Tyler, before you move on, I just want to make a quick point.
Sure.
That Assemblywoman that you quoted in the article, Assemblywoman Gonzalez, was the same Assemblywoman who sponsored AB 5, which is what Nicholas and I were talking about with the gig workers. She's the same legislator. She did both.
So Vinay just sent in an article from India that Amazon adding 110,000 jobs in India ahead of their seasonal festive season, like they do in December in the U.S., where they add similar numbers of people. So the next article, shall we, is
just by way of just giving some contrast to that number. Think about 110,000 people when the jobs number was 260,000 for last month, for example. How important that player is in the political world because of employment, even seasonal or not, and India or the US.
Yeah, no, it's a good point. It can absolutely change the jobs report, which moves the stock market. It's a massive number. So the next one is from the Washington Post, and it says researchers, despite Apple's privacy policy changes, at least 3 popular iOS apps are sending identifying info to third parties even when users opt out of tracking. On your iPhone, you can now tap a button that says, "Ask app not to track." When you get the new version of iOS 14.5, Apple, when you get the new version, first thing you'll notice, you'll be greeted by a pop-up that says, "Do you want to allow apps to track you?" And they're hoping you click no.
But they would be more honest if they said, "Do you want any other app than Apple to track you?" Because you don't get to opt out of them.
Right. That's implied consent. When you clicked I agree when you accepted the new operating system, didn't you see it in line 50,287 point B, Article 7? subsection I7 2Q, it says very clearly in 1-point font in your terms of agreement of the new operating system that Apple's going to track you. We all know that. So, but Apple's actually hoping you opt out of letting others track you because they want to build the mother of all ad networks and restrict Facebook's ability to do so. But anyway, this article says when you ask app not to track, some iPhone apps keep tracking you anyways. To test Apple's privacy protections, we watched the data flow out of 10 popular apps. On your iPhone, you can now tap a button that says ask app not to track, but behind the scenes, they keep snooping anyways. Say you open the app called Subway Surfers, listed as one of the App Store's must-play games. It asks if you're okay with the app tracking you, a question iPhone started asking in April as part of a privacy crackdown by Apple. Saying no is supposed to stop apps such as Subway Surfers and Facebook from learning about what you do in other apps and websites. But something curious happens when you ask not to be tracked, according to an investigation by researchers at private software maker Lockdown and the Washington Post. Subway Surfers starts sending an outside ad company called Chartboost 29 very specific data points about your iPhone, including your internet address, your free storage, your current volume level, and even your battery level. It's the kind of unique data that could be used by advertisers to identify your device, your iPhone, possibly letting them know what other apps you use and how to target you. In other words, it's sidestepping your request to be left alone. You can't stop it, and your privacy is worse off for it. Apple's rules say apps aren't allowed to track people who say they don't want it. So why is this happening? Privacy advocates say this kind of data gathering is likely tracking just by a different name called fingerprinting. Our investigation found that iPhone's tracking protections are nowhere nearly as comprehensive as Apple's advertising might suggest. We found at least 3 popular iPhone games share a substantial amount of identifying information with ad companies, even after being asked not to track. Here's the quote. Apple believes that tracking should be transparent to users and under their control, said spokesman Fred Sains. If we discover that a developer is not honoring the user's choice, we will work with the developer to address the issue, or they will be removed from the App Store. When we flagged our findings to Apple, it said it was reaching out to these companies to understand what information they are collecting and how they are sharing it. After several weeks, nothing appeared to have changed. Apple's so-called App Tracking Transparency Initiative has prompted big app makers such as Facebook and Zynga to complain it could hurt their profits, but that doesn't mean it has stopped all tracking. To find out what happens when you tap Ask App Not to Track, Lockdown says it tests 10 popular apps in the iPhone running iOS 14.8 and again with the newest iOS 15, which just came out Monday. We're at Thursday, so on Monday it came out. Analyzing what personal information flowed out of them. As part of the technical change that arrived in 14.5, the apps were no longer able to access one valuable piece of data, a kind of social security number for your phone known as the ID for advertisers, the IDFA. But there's other information that can identify your phone beyond that number. Lockdown found most of the apps continue to communicate beyond the scenes with murky industry of third-party data companies that privacy advocates call trackers. You've probably never heard of most of them, but they can receive a flood of information from your phone, potentially revealing how you use apps and even your location. Their uses for the data could be benign, like helping an app find bugs and track how well its design works, or they could be feeding your information to advertisers and data brokers. Among the apps Lockdown investigated, tapping the Don't Track button made no difference at all to the total number of third-party trackers the apps reached out to, and the number of times the apps attempted to send out data to these companies declined just to 13%. When it comes to stopping third-party trackers, app tracking transparency from Apple is a dud. Worse, giving users the option to tap Ask App Not to Track button may even give users a false sense of privacy, says Lockdown co-founder Johnny Lin, a former Apple iCloud engineer. Even more worrisome to consumers. Lockdown said 3 of the apps it investigated, Subway Surfers, Streamer Life, and RunRich 3D, appear to be collecting data that could be used for a more invasive kind of tracking known as digital fingerprinting. Fingerprinting happens when an app takes innocent-looking but technical information from your iPhone, like your volume, battery level, and IP address. Combined, those details create a picture of your phone that can be as unique as the skin of your thumb. From the same test phone, all three games lockdown tested sent ad network chart boost nearly the same exact array of device-specific data. An ad network is a company that serves as a broker between publishers and advertisers. All three also sent ultra-specific characteristics of the test iPhone to the ad company called Vungle that could allow app makers and advertisers to connect the dots and track you without your consent. Data shared by or with Chartboost include, there's a ton. Oh, here's what they're sharing. Your device name, like John's iPhone X, that's rather identifying. Accessibility settings like bold text, your accessibility setting like your custom text size, your display setting, if you have dark mode, your screen resolution, your time zone, your total storage space, which is rather unique as a fixed number, your free storage space, the currency of your phone, your iOS version, your audio output type, your audio input, your accessibility settings, your country, your cellular carrier like AT&T, your carrier country, your last restart time, your calendar type, which keyboards you have installed. Again, when you start to combine all of these things, I'm only halfway through the list, but
I feel naked.
But you get the point. When you cross-reference all of these, who has the phone with device name Tyler's iPhone that also has this particular time zone, this particular currency, this particular amount of free disk space? Oh, well, it's obviously that Tyler. We don't need his specific ID number. We found him through his other data, through the digital fingerprint.
The fingerprint needs to be added to the PII. And everybody take a big breath. This is another example, even Apple, of how these companies, not just Apple, but think about all the app developers. Sure, there's some huge, well-funded, unicorns with giant, huge teams of people working to create that little app that they put on your phone. Okay, but there's also a lot of smaller companies that are struggling to try to do the right thing, and then there are nefarious developers. But this system is not architected properly to deliver a safe environment for users. And so somebody needs to be held accountable. In this case, it would be Apple. There's no reason why they can't architect a solution here. In the 90s, Bud Tribble, who's got probably a 500 IQ, I swear to God, that guy, he was one of Sun's architects. There's a few that just walked on water. They were just, and he's a great guy. He's a really sweet guy. But when we were working on the Java platform, we put a lot of energy into architecting it in a way to provide a bunch of different things. And there's no reason why in today's time that they could architect a more secure solution. So anytime you get to share your thoughts about this, just expect more. Just expect more from these companies. Sorry, Tyler, it's my soapbox. I apologize.
Tyler,
Um,
I have a
can I,
question for the
wait,
Go
group.
for it.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Lady first.
can I just quickly?
Yeah.
This is just more of a PSA more than anything else, but also, I don't know that Apple can necessarily be held at least exclusively liable. It's probably going to be also these companies. Here's the PSA part. Um, Most companies are not compliant with GDPR, which is the European rule, which is honestly like the default rule most people should follow, not the US rules. I am always amazed and shocked, at least in the blockchain world, nobody's compliant. Like zero people, unless I wrote their privacy policy and they actually did what was required in there. So I'm just saying that you have to be extremely careful because the liability is increasing because the irritation and anger with privacy intrusion is also increasing, right? And so, since these are set by people who are subject to being elected, most of them are starting to respond very aggressively, especially because the people who are making the rulings and the people who are making the laws are also subject to these, like intrusive privacy issues. The other thing is, if you ever say unsubscribe or something, like say someone's sending you spam and it says click unsubscribe, a lot of those people will circumvent the rule by selling your name to spam lists or other marketers, by saying it's active, right? That's the same thing where if you respond to someone who's calling you, and then say, not interested, they'll sell your number as an active number. So more people can try again to take advantage of it. So just know that any response is a bad response because that is how they're actually capitalizing on you. They've found lots of ways to capitalize, and I haven't actually seen any case law that has removed that. The other thing I haven't seen is a lot of the do not call list stuff, and you're supposed to have an $11,000 fine for each instance. But so many of these companies are using this trading, information from one company to another, where they're just passing around your data, but not using it directly. They've been very successful actually in circumventing that rule. So just FYI, this whole system's a mess.
Tyler, did you just tweet that article?
I did.
Thank you.
What I was going to ask is, do our regulators and politicians really understand, Tyler and Group, the components that you listed, Tyler? Because I get blank stares from a number of them, and I'm assuming that it's kind of hard to regulate and provide guidance if you don't understand just a handful of the things that you listed that identifies people. I don't think they understand all that, especially when you're talking about font sizes and things like that. Many of them just go, oh, well, who cares?
Yeah.
And how do we educate them to understand why they should care on things that they may not fully understand?
Tyler, can I pop in? Donna here.
Yeah. Hey, Donna.
Hi. Yeah, I mean it's almost a rhetorical question if you remember the questioning of Zuckerberg at the hearings about privacy. I mean, it was laughable, the questions that were asked, and just showed that the legislative body, the people within it, and even their staff just had no clue. I mean, they were much better the second go round, not about privacy, but when they were talking about Libra, only because people within the industry spent time with the staffs, just to teach them a little bit about it, because they realized what a problem the Libra, now DM, idea of Facebook was. So yeah, they don't really understand many aspects, and getting to the staff is the best way to try and do that. And concerted efforts, I know in some areas are being done, but there are a lot of people to talk to, and just a few influential ones that can push policy in another direction.
Okay, so the next article is from the Wall Street Journal and others like Reuters. It says that the U.S. federal judge in D.C. orders Facebook to hand over records on posts that were removed for promoting violence against the Rohingya Muslims in Myanmar, when these posts would have been made by the Buddhist monks, believe it or not. And I know this because I live in the region. And the calls for violence, this is just a really sad scenario that unfolded back in 2019, where the Rohingya Muslims that live on the border of Bangladesh and Burma, which otherwise known as Myanmar, there was a whole bunch of friction between the Buddhists in Burma and the Muslims. And the Buddhist monks themselves were leading the charge against the Muslims and it brought in the military, the Burmese military, to force the Muslims across the border back into Bangladesh. So now, according to the Wall Street Journal, a U.S. federal judge orders Facebook to hand over the posts that had been removed of these posts that promoted violence against the Rohingya Muslims. So these are posts by the high-ranking Buddhist monks of Burma, believe it or not. Because people have this weird notion of Southeast Asian Buddhist monks as being, all Zen and everything. And I can assure you, living here in Thailand, it is very, 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 very far from that. I will create a separate Twitter account for you of all the murders that occur here in Thailand are very often by Buddhist monks at Thai temples who are killing people, who are getting caught watching porn, who are being caught at bars dressed as women, holy shit. The stuff that the monks do in Thailand is just like needs its own TikTok channel. So they're not at all what Americans think they are. Not at all. It's more like a homeless shelter is the closest American equivalent to what how they function. It's people who don't fit into society who end up here. So it's and often are unemployable and they become monks. So it's not the traditional notion of somebody who's dedicated their lives to learning the ways of Gautama Siddhartha. In fact, if you interview most of them, as I have, they have no idea where Buddha was born or when he was born or what his birth name was or any of that. They know nothing about Buddha, despite the fact that they wear the robes and they live in a Buddhist temple. I'll grant you that. They do live there. They do go out at night to bars, but anyway.
And they go around collecting donations, right?
Yes, but that's I have no judgment on that. So,
write a movie script, Tyler. Write a movie script.
I don't need to.
You're educating, I think, all of us, or at least a whole lot of us, on the ground truth about that. Wow.
It is
Taylor,
wild. Yes.
This is Famita. I actually walked in when you brought up Bangladesh.
Yeah.
Can you just repeat that again? Thank you.
Yes. So here's what's going on. The Wall Street Journal headline reads as follows. U.S. federal judge orders Facebook to hand over records on posts that were removed for promoting violence against Rohingya Muslims in Myanmar. So, to read this backwards, there are Rohingya Muslims in Myanmar. There was Facebook posts that were promoting violence against them. These posts were from the Burmese Buddhist monks. That's who was leading the charge against the Rohingya Muslims in Burma. And those posts were removed because they were calls to violence. And that violates Facebook's policies. So they took down those posts. You with me so far? Now,
yes.
Okay, why is this relevant? Here's why it's relevant. Because this has become an international criminal court case in The Hague. Because the Burmese and the Buddhist monks are politically tied to the military, the Burmese military. And this battle, I really just need to explain what happened. Documentarians have cracked, and news organizations have cracked this down and found the actual arson moment where the match was lit in the precise little shop where it actually all went down. And the actual two individuals of whom it all went down with. It was a Muslim living in Burma, and the Rohingya live just inside the border of Burma, on the border of Bangladesh. And one of the Muslim gentlemen was accused of raping one of the Buddhist women. And so the Burmese Buddhists in town, which basically all Burmese are kind of loosely Buddhists, not super strongly, but anyway, they retaliated and burnt down the dude's house. And then that village of Muslims came and, retaliated and, escalated a bit. And then the non-Muslims, let's call them Buddhists, retaliated yet again. And it kept escalating like a Southeast LA gang war between the Bloods and the Crips. Or the Sharks and the Jets.
Over a period of years.
Yes, over a long period of time.
Almost a decade. 2012 is when that incident happened.
Right. So this kept escalating. And by the way, it's the reports will say that initial rape was actually misinformation that triggered this entire thing. which has led to hundreds of thousands of Rohingyas now living as refugees on the other side of the border in Bangladesh. So talk about misinformation and what it can lead to. Holy shit. So anyways, hold on, Robert. The point here, here's the point. The point here is that because there a lot of this this part of the world uses Facebook as its main means of communication. And there were Facebook posts, and some of those Facebook posts were about the coordinating of, let's attack them. And it was, negative stuff that had to be taken down. It was taken down. And now a judge ruled that the deleted posts don't fall under the legal protections for personal communication. Locking away the requested content would be throwing away the opportunity to understand how disinformation begat genocide, because that's what this evolved into. The escalation turned into genocide. So that's what this case is all about. The ruling by a magistrate judge in Washington criticized Facebook for refusing to provide the records of these deleted posts to countries who are pursuing a case against Myanmar in the International Criminal Court, saying allowing it to keep those posts and not revealing them for the court case would compound the tragedy that has befallen the Rohingya. Facebook has resisted the request for information related to the closed accounts because Facebook shut down those accounts of those people who were calling for violence, essentially, which makes sense, of course. And kudos to Facebook for taking down the accounts and removing the content at the time. However, the court case at The Hague is like, Facebook, we need this for the court case, and Facebook isn't complying. Make sense? I think it does. So that's where the judge is saying, hey, Facebook, you have to give, there's been a subpoena. Facebook has resisted the request for information related to the accounts, arguing that providing such documents in response to a civil subpoena would violate U.S. privacy law. So Facebook is saying, we would love to give you that. We would love to give it to you, but it violates a U.S. privacy law, which the judge says, no, it doesn't. Not at all. Go ahead and give it.
Tyler, two things real quick on this.
Yeah.
Number one, I'm surprised Facebook did not use the argument also that the United States government does not formally support the ICC. So that could be one of their outs. But the other thing is, a couple weeks ago, the Burma government, we call it Burma, some people call it Myanmar, actually released the head of the group of 969 movement, which is actually the Buddhist group that was anti-Muslim, but they actually released them after having them in jail for a little bit. So the timing of all this is pretty interesting.
Facebook spokesperson said that the company was reviewing the decision. We remain appalled by the atrocities committed against the Rohingya people in Myanmar and support justice for the international crimes, she said, adding that the company had made 12 data disclosures to the UN-established investigation of the violence over the past year. So I think they're going to end up giving it over. I don't see why wouldn't they, really? I mean, they're claiming that it's because the U.S. doesn't care. So I'm curious what they just don't want it to be revealed that Facebook was used to escalate. Well, here's what I think. Honestly, now that I think about it, Facebook, I said when we talked about this 9 hours ago, when we were in this room, Facebook is the way people communicate in that part of the world. In other parts of the world, they use the Line app. In other parts of the world, they use Telegram. In other parts of the world, they use WeChat. In that part of the world, they happen to use Facebook. I believe that whole scenario would have happened in a similar way with wheat posters pre-technological days. I don't really think fundamentally Facebook's to blame. However, data scientists and Facebook itself, maybe Facebook knows, looking at its own data, that maybe it did play some kind of role in escalating this kind of violence between these two groups. Maybe the way the social platform algorithms are engineered fans flames of tension between groups of this type.
And the other piece of it is back in 2011, 2012, there were just a few, and I don't remember the number, but I know that one of my MBA students' families ran one of the few communications agencies in the country. So it, placed even a stronger kind of burden on platforms like Facebook because people didn't have access to centralized news sources. Yeah, so I think you're absolutely right on, Tyler. Facebook is at the center of this issue.
Yeah, they don't like their name being attached to this thing at all. And maybe it shouldn't be. Maybe, if they were using the Line app as, other parts of the Southeast Asia do, maybe this would have happened online. Maybe not. Maybe Facebook's algorithms fan flames when in the way the algorithms work around who's exposed to what content and how it's perceived and who gets targeted by it and what, and maybe their data scientists ran the numbers and they know, oh shit, let's bury that thing because we might become guilty by association. And that's why they don't. So
if they release the information and that caused people who might be more hesitant to use the Facebook platform for similar posts in the future, would that drive down the number of daily users?
Don't know. Gambia's case asked Facebook to provide draft and published posts, and they want the draft posts, not just the published posts. Interesting. And messages from accounts used by senior military officials, as well as those controlled by, because that would be the proof. Because the Burma's saying no, it's not genocide. No. Oh, we were provoked, so we were just responding, and all of this and da. Well, let's look at your Facebook data. Let's look at your messages between the military folks and see what happened.
It's probably Facebook's attempt to feign like that you have some kind of assurance that when you're in their service and you're removing something that you posted, that it's gone. And if that's known to all the users that it's not gone, it reminds me a lot of like the Apple controversy when they had that terrorism up in Rancho Cucamonga, and they found the iPhone, and Jobs and everybody else just refused to give the FBI the code to break into it, because they didn't want it to get out that they would give it to higher ups and police and officials for any reason. So they just kind of dug their heels in, and this kind of reminds me of that.
Okay, so the next article is from CNBC. Chinese AR glasses maker called Nreal, letter N, REAL, Nreal, raises $100 million at a $700 million valuation to develop its Nreal glasses that connect with smartphones. So here comes the AR glass battle for real, all over, with multiple players in the U.S. in that one. Now China's got a player. The next one's from the New York Times. Despite passing a tough hate speech law, researchers say social networks in Germany are flooded with hate speech and harassment ahead of an election on September 26th. Scrolling and let's see here. This is from the New York Times. Politico also has Mark Scott at Politico, who covers tech in Europe for Politico, says ahead of German election, Telegram plays radicalizing role. The messaging app has allowed conspiracy theories, debunked falsehoods, and hate speech to run wild. The talk in mainstream media after Germany's second presidential debate was all about Olaf Scholz, the frontrunner to become the country's next chancellor. Not so on Telegram, the messaging app. One post viewed 80,000 times on the app urged voters to back independent candidates in the September 26th election. Another, read 72,000 times, warned that the German military and big tech companies were out to undermine the upcoming vote. A third, garnering almost 200,000 views, spread anti-vaccine falsehoods and decried the pandemia mafia, the people who planned the pandemic. As Germans head to the polls this week, Telegram, which has become a favorite for privacy-savvy locals, is fast becoming a hotbed for far-right voters, people peddling conspiracy theories, and extremists promoting hate speech. And experts are concerned that this vocal minority may be the messenger to organize protests and spread misinformation about the upcoming vote in Europe's largest economy. I'm going to just take a little search for the name of a particular country. Oh, it does come up in this article. Oh, what a surprise. I did a little search for one particular country to see if it might be named in this article, and it is twice, in fact, 3 times. So many of these voters, the messaging app can also amplify and entrench online communities of far-right voters and conspiracy theorists. Many of these voters have turned away from mainstream coverage in droves during the COVID-19 pandemic. In the build-up to the election, German officials have been slow to respond to the threat of online misinformation, while state-backed actors, most notably from Russia, still play a significant role in the country's public debate on social media. Some content from RT Deutsch, the Kremlin-backed news outlet, has appeared in mostly far-right Telegram channels, according to Political's analysis. Here's the quote: "There's clearly a huge demand for what Russia is selling here amongst Germans. And that, I think, across the West is deeply concerning," says Brett Schaefer, head of the information manipulation team at the German Marshall Fund Alliance for Securing Democracy. So it looks like Putin's up to his old tricks using tech social media platforms prior to elections, which he himself was so careful to make sure Apple and Google removed his political opponents' apps in the days before their election this weekend. How interesting.
Tyler,
How very, very interesting. Yes, Cami.
I have some breaking news from the UK.
Hold that thought. Go ahead.
This coming hot off the press from BBC News. AI cannot be the inventor of a patent, an appeal court rules.
Mm-hmm.
This news update is the appeal court ruled against Stephen Thaler, the creator of a system called Dabus, who took a case against the UK Intellectual Property Office, which refused patents to his AI. So that's good news for humans.
So that's two for the humans, one for AI. South Africa, you can have AI patent. US and UK, you cannot. So there's 153 countries that participate in the Patent Cooperation Treaty. So we're going to hear this another 150 times.
But who owns the patent then in that? Does the person who created the AI own the
Well,
patent?
remember, patents, inventors and assignees are different entities, or they can be one and the same, but they're different classes. Like whoever invents it and whoever gets assigned it are kind of different. You know, once you assign it, it's gone forever.
Right, but if the AI creates something that's patentable, does the person, if it's not patentable because it's from AI, is there still ability to award a patent, and who would get that? The person who
That
created
it,
the AI?
that is an excellent contractual question. That's something where if you're developing AI, in my opinion, right? If you're developing AI, one of the things that you should do when it's developed and when it's deployed is write an agreement that makes sure that anything that is created by the AI is essentially work for hire from you, right? That's what AI is doing. It's basically a program that's work for hire. So if you are deploying it and it's under your roof, then it is your work, but you have to specify that, right? If you are working with someone else or the AI draws information from something that is like not, in public use or anything like that, then you may have to share rights depending on how important that is. And so there are some benchmarks already in terms of how much ownership meets a certain level where you get a level of ownership versus just maybe a credit or something like that. There's most areas have these kinds
So Alexander, let me just jump in really quick because I'm taking off. But it's there. That's absolutely already done. So you can divide the data coming in, whether it's your data, whether it's a company's data, like when you're deploying this, and the industry term is insights, tends to be the out term there, what the AI is finding, and then who owns that is contractual. You say so. It's like if it's your data, we're using our AI to run on your data. We want to use your data to better our AI. That's one thing, but also the outputs of it. And so those are all contractually done. But I'm wondering by law, because this whole patent thing around the outputs of AI has been really interesting. And I'm just wondering who owns that, whether it is patentable because it was not generated by a human.
If it's not, that's what I'm saying. So all of this stuff with regarding being able to, like, how you separate ownership and things like that, that should also be in the contract. And right now the only thing we have is a tiny amount of guidance in case like that, this one case apparently, and that's not even in the US. But so far it would be, as far as I understand, the same kind of thing as if you put in something into a mechanical program and you put in an algorithm, you own that algorithm, you own anything that that algorithm produces. Same thing right now, right? If we're going with what the UK said as, you know, general approach in law, right now what we have is you basically will regard it as an algorithm that's working for you, and anything that it produces is yours unless there are other people who add input and they have some ownership, or you've licensed it off to someone else and you've also licensed off the right to have ownership of those particular outputs there. So all of this to be said that right now, until there's more clarity, make an agreement, put it in a contract. Not legal advice.
Okay, next one.
Hey, Tyler, some other breaking news.
Go for it.
China flies 19 aircraft, including fighters and nuclear-capable bombers, into Taiwan's airspace as tensions rise in the wake of the Australian Submarine Pact. So I guess that happened Thursday morning. Kind of a big escalation in tensions with Taiwan.
Yeah,
Thanks.
there's
Hail Formosa, Formosa's here to stay. I don't know what they're doing.
Just watch October 10th. That's their Independence Day. So.
Oh, by the way,
Tensions.
that Independence Day has now been ruled illegal to celebrate in obviously in China. That makes sense. But now in Hong Kong, it cannot be celebrated. And why not? Hong Kong has freedom of speech. And the rules in Hong Kong was, you can't do anything that's of a national security threat. So you can't protest in Hong Kong for independence in Hong Kong. Okay, I see where you're going. You can't, no talk about independence for Hong Kong. Okay, got you. What the hell does Taiwan have to do with that? You can't celebrate you see what I'm saying? It's, by the way, there's another article BBC put out today. All of the film industry of Hong Kong is basically being shuttered because the Chinese mainland auditors are now in place, and they're not. This happened with the book publishers a few weeks ago, and now it's happening with the filmmakers. So basically, the films and books are now kind of been squashed in Hong Kong, which is very unfortunate for all of the artists there. So they're now clamping down on the culture piece. In addition to after the protesters have now been put in line, now all the artists are next. So the next big article is that Apple releases StoreKit 2 alongside iOS 15, letting developers quickly access a user's purchase history and letting users request a refund in-app directly from the developer, and more. Next up is Facebook details the types of posts that get demoted in the newsfeed, such as clickbait and spam. But stops short of saying exactly how a demotion works. A high-level look at what gets suppressed by Facebook's algorithms. The way that Facebook controls its newsfeed is often controversial and largely opaque to the outside world. And perhaps deliciously ironically, the very next article is from the Financial Times. Researchers look into, as social networks clamp down on disinformation, Russia has begun spreading propaganda in comments sections on news outlets such as Daily Mail. Online sites test new methods as social media platforms try to scrub their platforms of propaganda. and state actor influence until July 2020. Ruslan Ostashchenko claims he was making $15,000 a month pumping out pro-Kremlin propaganda on YouTube. But then YouTube demonetized his channel. Polit Russia, that's his channel, Polit Russia, stopping it from earning a share of advertising revenue from views of its videos. When he tried to challenge the decision, he was told he would have to pursue legal action in the U.S. We've had difficulties with Western social networks, lamented Oshtenko. Our main platform is YouTube, and we've had monetization disabled for almost 2 years now. In response, Polit Russia, his channel, now appeals for readers' donations at the end of each video. Since 2017, the biggest Western social media companies have tried to tighten their policies around propaganda and disinformation on their platforms. Facebook said it had removed more than 6,000 Russian-linked accounts, pages, and groups from its main site, and Instagram in that time period. Twitter said it had banned more than 5,000 Russian accounts since 2018, and YouTube said it had removed more than 2 million Russian videos since 2019. Many of the banned posts and accounts have been linked to the Internet Research Agency, the Kremlin-backed group that was accused of using social media to try and influence the outcome of the 2016 U.S. presidential election, or to the GRU, Russia's military intelligence service. In response, Russian propaganda and disinformation efforts have pivoted to find new outlets. According to a visiting fellow at USC's Annenberg School of Communication and Journalism. Here's the quote: You can't predict when Facebook will decide to take something down, he said. They've switched from social networks to other channels of communication. Researchers at Cardiff University found that the reader comment section of Western media outlets such as the Daily Mail, the Daily Express, Fox News, and Der Spiegel are increasingly being manipulated by propagandists who then point to pro-Kremlin comments as evidence of sympathy for Russian government in the West. The comments are used as a basis for positive news stories in the Russian media, such as news sites info.smi.ru, with headlines such as Fox News readers, Russians are afraid of no one, and German readers, Russians will always be one step ahead of NATO. And the article goes on and on and on. So now, as we've said here, the platforms are getting better at the endless game of whack-a-mole they've been engaged in for over a decade of stopping the Chinese and Russian sock puppet accounts, bot accounts. And now they're having to innovate. And they're using the comment sections on news articles. And they're paying people with legitimate social media accounts to be their voice. Most notably in Kenya was the headline, where Kenyans can make $10 a day expressing the views of people who are willing to pay $10 a day to have their political views shared on Twitter and on those platforms. So the next one up is from TechCrunch. Spotnana, which offers SaaS tools for travel industry, emerges from stealth with $34 million Series A. YouTube is testing letting premium subscribers download videos to its desktop site through October 19th. And Biden plans to nominate Cornell law professor and cryptocurrency critic Saleh Omarova to run the office of the comptroller of the currency. And London-based grocery delivery startup Jiffy raises $28 million. Automakers globally will produce 7.7 million fewer cars this year due to chip shortage, costing them $210 billion in sales, as chip lead time slipped to 21 weeks. And a look at the efforts to close the digital divide in states like Arkansas, as Microsoft study finds that around 120 million Americans don't have access to high-speed internet. Well, that will now change due to Starlink. And LG is acquiring Israeli startup Cybellum, which detects and assesses vulnerabilities in connected vehicles. And Seattle-based Remitly, which lets users send and receive money across borders, raises $300 million in its IPO at a valuation of $7 billion. What else?
What's the up channel bandwidth on Starlink? I'm just, because as proposing that as a solution in rural, just America as an example, I'm just curious if it's sufficient enough for the entrepreneurship facilitated by having a mobile phone and a video, like video streaming and making money, like the promise of the internet.
The
Is it sufficient for that?
median
So it's
upload
giving
speed
it's
is
giving it's about 140 Mbps
down and 14 up.
down, 14 up. That's right.
And then now we get into the fun tweets. Oh, actually, no. Let me refresh on my daily list of popular stories here and see if any new ones have popped up since we started. There is one. Senator Marsha Blackburn says Wall Street Journal's Facebook Files whistleblower has turned over documents and plans to reveal their identity at some point. We covered that. Google details several accessibility features coming to Android 12, including facial gesture controls, handwriting recognition, and an app for low vision users. And that's pretty much it. We did cover the rest of these.
Sorry, Tyler, there's one bit of news that I think I tweeted it to you.
Mm-hmm.
Modi's in the US, and the first meeting he had was with 5 CEOs, and the companies that he met, those 5, if I list them out: Qualcomm for the 5G network in India, General Atomics, which for those of you in the US might know, that's one of the largest drone technology companies. He met First Solar, which is solar powered, and Blackstone. So really interesting for investments. So very, signaling the focus areas as well. And then Adobe for some of the investments as well.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So on that note, some of the other fantastic tweets that people are sending in, like this one, Reuters has a new article calling it an exclusive. They just came out 3 hours ago. Big tech targeted by US and EU in draft memo ahead of tech and trade meeting. The US and the EU plan to take a more unified approach to limiting the growing market power of big tech companies, according to a draft memo seen by Reuters. The move will be among announcements on tech, climate, trade, and supply chains likely to be made at the US-EU Trade and Technology Council meeting September 29th in Pittsburgh. With the US and Europe trying to restrain the growing powers of American tech giants such as Google, Facebook, Apple, and Amazon. Okay, the next one is from Krishna, who joins us in the audience. I'm retweeting it now from MIT Tech Review. Young people are more likely to believe and pass on misinformation if they feel a sense of common identity with the person who shared it in the first place. This research has lessons for all of us, including the Kremlin. So if you want to influence young Americans, create avatars that look like the people you're targeting so they can believe your misinformation campaigns and propaganda.
John Madison brought up a really good framing of this with regards to just what's driving lots of this tribalism, that it's the talking heads driving that. So that would be very supportive of that whole notion, right? I mean, if I'm a big Tucker Carlson, fan, and if Tucker Carlson is sharing something specific, I'm going to believe it more than just be more apply critical thinking skills.
Maurice in the audience sends in one from the New York Times. New York set to pass sweeping laws to improve conditions for delivery workers. What's the date on this? September 23rd. That's today. A package of legislation from the city council will set minimum pay and working conditions, placing New York at the forefront of regulating a multi-billion-dollar industry. This battle of New York versus the delivery apps continues. Grubhub, DoorDash, and Uber Eats. The city council is on track to pass a groundbreaking package of legislation that will set minimum pay and improve working conditions for couriers employed by app-based food delivery services. The bills, which have the support of Mayor Bill de Blasio, are the latest and the most broad example of the city's continuing effort to regulate the multi-billion-dollar industry. While other cities have taken steps to restrict the food delivery apps, no city has gone as far as New York, which is home to the largest and most competitive food delivery market in the country. The legislation would prevent the food delivery apps and courier services from charging workers fees to receive their pay, make the apps disclose their tipping policies, prohibit food delivery apps from charging delivery workers for insulated food bags, which can cost up to $50, and require restaurant owners to make bathrooms available to delivery workers. Okay. Then thank you for that
Remember,
one,
I kind of brought
Maurice.
that up earlier. Remember about the reef? I said they got to have a bathroom to use. So thanks for bringing that up.
Yeah. And so Krishna, there's someone named Krishna Gandhi who's tweeting me saying, "Why are you talking about? I didn't send anything to you." When I said someone named Krishna sent me an article, Krishna Gandhi, you're not the only Krishna on the planet, and you're not the only Krishna in tech news around the world. There's more than one Krishna sending me articles. Let's answer your question there, so you can stop DMing me.
And
Why
Krishna, as a
am I sharing
if there
fake news? Krishna Gandhi wants to know.
and Krishna, tip for you: if you're ever in a room with another Krishna, it takes a little bit of critical thinking to think if it's pertinent to you. I'm in
Vinay,
here with
can
a
you do a
Chris all
quick
the time.
check how many Krishnas are there in the world?
In the world?
In India, maybe? I don't know. Is it an Indian name,
Yeah,
Krishna?
probably around 30, 40 million.
Well, to make it even funnier, I retweeted the original article from the other Krishna, so she can see who the other Krishna is that I'm retweeting by going to the Tech News Twitter account. But as I always tell everyone, we retweet these every time I read the headline. I'm also tweeting it to our Tech News Twitter account, like that one from Krishna that I just shared about 10 minutes ago. So the next one up is from who sent this one in? From India Today. Somebody just sent this one in. Sanjeev. Was it? Maybe not. This is from India Today. I got to tweet this one out right now. From India Today, which is a rather reputable news source, that the ISI, which is the intelligence agency of Pakistan, which happens to run Pakistan, is planning a big terror strike in India. Alert issued. Intel sources. An alert was issued in India on September 18th after intelligence inputs suggested that Pakistan's ISI was allegedly planning to carry out a big terror strike in India. Sources in the intelligence agencies revealed ISI is planning to plant an improvised explosive device, an IED, in a tiffin box to trigger a blast. The plan is to target crowded places during the festival seasons, sources said. Sources also said the terrorists might also try to infiltrate during this period. The planning is at an advanced stage involving men, material, and finance. 6, including 2 Pakistani trained suspected terrorists, were arrested in connection with the matter. Okay, so let's hope everything goes okay during India's festive season. The next one is from David, and if your name's David and this wasn't you, please don't DM me. There was more than one David in here sending me stories. This one's from David Crace from New Republic, that the corporate surveillance industry has become a global monster, is the name of the article. Companies like Israel's NSO Group have revolutionized how governments spy on their citizens. Can they be tamed? No, they can't. It's never been easier for governments covertly to access and monitor the phones of activists, journalists, dissidents, politicians, and, well, anyone they want. Zero-click tools easily purchased from private corporate developers allow authorities to hack victims' phones in surreptitious ways, even if the target doesn't click the link, etc., etc. You know the story about Pegasus, I assume. And the quote says, "No one is safe from the out-of-control designer spyware industry," wrote surveillance whistleblower Edward Snowden on Twitter, where he dubbed the leak the story of the year. Export controls have failed as a means of regulating this easily abused technology. Without an immediate global moratorium on the trade, this will only get worse. And I have to agree with Mr. Snowden's assessment on that one. So I will tweet that one out from David Crace to the Tech News Twitter account, so you can read that one. The next one's from Damalera from BBC. Fraudsters steal £4 million a day as crimes surge. Total loss through fraud online rockets by 30% in the first half of the year, with many victims not refunded. So it is a whole bunch of booming there. BB sends in this one from Nikkei Japan, that China goes on intellectual property offensive. Enhanced IP legislation means foreign companies need to be ready for lawsuits. I assume what they're talking about is how China is trying to flood the zone with patents. Foreign businesses in China are becoming key targets in a growing number of intellectual property lawsuits filed by Chinese companies. Enhanced IP legislation, which has led to high amounts of damages for violations granted by courts, has opened the floodgates for litigation as Chinese firms have become more protective of their own IP rights. The number of IP-related lawsuits filed in China in 2020 was more than 3 times the figure of 2016. The trend has meant that Japanese companies, for example, are having to adjust their China IP strategies, which have traditionally been focused on dealing with infringements involving Chinese businesses in order to be better prepared for the risk of being sued by Chinese competitors. One Japanese company that has been embroiled in IP legal disputes with Chinese companies is Ryohin Keikaku, the Tokyo-based company that runs the Muji chain of household goods stores. We will continue to keep our eyes on the ball, says the head of the company's legal and IP affairs department, after the company's victory in trademark lawsuit filed by Beijing Cottonfield Textile Corp. And other Chinese company was established in July. The court battle lasted for 2.5 years. But Muji is still involved in more than 10 legal disputes with the companies over its Muji Rushi Ryohin, meaning no brand quality goods trademark, written in Chinese characters, used in some of its woven fabric products, including bed covers and towels. There's no end in sight to the Japanese company's fight to protect its trademark in the country. Muji is on a growing list of foreign companies that have been hit by IP-related lawsuits in China. Apple has been sued by a Chinese AI company that claims the U.S. tech group's voice recognition technology Siri infringes on its patents. Very unfortunate. It seems China's trademarking and registering and patenting everything they can, and then taking people to court for infringing on their IP. So Muji's logo is infringing. In Muji is spelled M-U-J-I. Under M-U-J-I, there is characters in Muji's logo, which are both Chinese and Japanese characters called kanji. They're used in both languages. And as part of Muji's logo, always has been, in every store that they operate in the world. And the Asian characters translate into no brand quality goods, is how you would translate the 4 Asian characters under the Muji logo that they've always used. And now China is trying to say, that's our intellectual property. No, Muji's been using that as part of their logo from the beginning. But you registered it in China, and now Muji's doing business in China, and it's a new fun little game of doing business in China that Muji's having to play with there.
So I'm sorry. Did the Japanese company with the Muji ownership outside of China, did they register it in China? Is this something that China has gone back and taken a registration and allowed it to be, unprotected, or are they just making a statement that? I mean, the first question is that what the article is saying? And I ask that because it's important, because in China it's a kind of flip flop of how patents work here, at least in the States, where first use, it's only copyright. And please, lawyers, speak up. But first use versus first to file, it was everything I've ever learned with regards to how the big distinction with regards to how it works in China versus the States.
China is first to file.
But I must tell you something, because recently I was looking at this IP thing. The trademark thing. And then to be honest with you, Japanese have the lowest rate of trademark filing. So they actually didn't protect themselves enough. So that's too bad for them. But of course, it's something that they should improve, because I think I mentioned to you guys before many times that Jennifer, you have a hot mic. Is that Jennifer, Tyler?
Yeah. Let's see, who's that? We have Jay open.
It is Jennifer.
Okay, let me.
Yeah. So yeah,
Sorry.
they are pretty backwards in digitalization. So a lot of things are paper filing, including the trademark and the patent. So I checked the numbers. Actually, Japanese trademarks are not very well protected overseas.
Yep. Okay. Next one here is California's running out of water is the actual headline from a California public organization. Californians barely reduced water use at home over the past year, even after being urged to conserve 15%. In fact, water usage has gone up in the San Diego, Orange County areas, causing a big problem as they're asking for a 15% decline. And again, the headline reads, California is running out of water. The two indications California is running out of water. The challenge is there's no water, says the director of the state's Water Resource Board. Marin County is competing with Mohammed bin Salman, the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, to buy desalination plants, otherwise known as MBS. And so the question is, who needs water more, Saudi Arabia or California? Who's willing to pay more for these desalination plants? Interesting dilemma here developing with California's water shortage. So the next one is from Lavina. That Tesla-backed Zola Electric is solving Africa's energy shortage. And I think the bigger news there is that Tesla is investing in this African solar power company. And it says by 2025, Africa will be more populated than China. However, 600 million people do not have access to electricity. That's fantastic. So there's a huge opportunity there. And the next one's from Ted Abramson from Electric, that Toyota is facing boycotts over its fight to slow electric vehicle progress. Some environmentalists are starting to call for a boycott on Toyota as the automaker keeps using its money and influence to slow down electric vehicle progress. Oh boy. Uh-oh, Toyota. Uh-oh. Youch.
Yeah, I mean Toyota's the number one selling car in the U.S. by far, the Camry. So they're the incumbent, sort of.
Yeah, wild. Now facing boycotts. Ouch. The next one from Maurice says, from ProPublica, Facebook grew Marketplace to 1 billion users. The Facebook Marketplace is a part inside of the Facebook app where you can buy and sell stuff. And you can pick the geography, normally your neighbors. And they've grown it to 1 billion users using Facebook Marketplace. Now scammers are using it for all kinds of listings and abuses. ProPublica identified thousands of marketplace listings and profiles that broke the company's rules, revealing how Facebook failed to safeguard users. Yes, and this is not particularly surprising because Facebook and tech companies focus on growth. Growth. You have a particular team who's specifically focused on growth and increasing the number of people using that product or feature. You have a separate team who does safety, who those two teams are essentially competing with each other. And the first team is not at all concerned. And the growth team is winning in this battle. And the security team needs to do better at, but this is the mantra of Facebook, was go fast and break things. And they're going fast because you win if you grow, and then you can deal with the problems later. This has been Facebook's MO from day one. This has been going on for over a decade. There's absolutely nothing surprising about this headline in the least. This is just how not only Facebook works, but a lot of tech startups work. Because if you go into it limiting all of the uses from the beginning, that your startup fails. Your startup doesn't exist. So, yeah, this is an interesting aspect of the DNA of startups that is interesting to debate, because that same mentality could be catastrophic when applied to genetic engineering, for example. David?
Sorry. Die hack culture die? I don't know. I don't want to debate it with you because there's a bunch of cool news stories. But anytime we set up a room with regards to talk about that, the ethics of, or maybe the stories here that relate to ethics, I'd love to be a part of that. The rationale used by Zuckerberg and what he catalyzed as a culture to just break shit, and this idea of customer development, but just break shit and just not pay attention to any other kinds of security and things like that is a problematic culture that needs to die, and we need to evolve from it.
Yeah. So the next one
Thanks.
From Evan from MarketWatch, that FedEx and Aurora to launch autonomous truck routes in Texas. FedEx is one of America's two biggest shipping companies, and they need to go into
Perfect location. I mean, West Texas is nothing around for 500 miles, so can't go wrong.
The self-driving vehicle startup Aurora are launching a pilot of autonomous truck shipments between Dallas and Houston. So here comes the autonomous trucking. Yet again, a whole bunch of it. Kuram sends in this one from Mac Rumors that Apple CEO Tim Cook says in a leaked memo, "We are doing everything in our power to identify leakers." And you can spot the irony there that this was revealed from a leaked memo, that Apple's doing everything in its power to find out who's leaking memos. And Heyman sends in this one from The Guardian, that government review finds 10% of drugs dispensed in England are pointless. That's the headline from The Guardian. Government review finds 10% of drugs dispensed in England are pointless. Ministers call for crackdown, and family doctors will be told to boost the use of social prescribing. And then Kevin sends in this one from The Hill. There's a clear cell phone cancer link, but FDA is downplaying it. And the FDA needs to fulfill the intent of their nomination of the National Toxicology Program and conduct of quantitative risk assessment. This one could get really juicy. Kevin, if you're still with us, raise your hand up here. So I know he did a documentary about this. It's a really interesting topic here, but this is from a relatively respectable publication, The Hill, which says there's a clear link, there's a clear cell phone cancer link, but the FDA is downplaying it. A recent study by the National Toxicology Program, National Institutes of Health, shows clear evidence of a causal link between cancer and the exposure to wireless cell phone signals. Results from a $30 million NTP studies demonstrated that cell phone radiation caused Schwann cell cancers of the heart and brain gliomas in rats, as well as DNA damage to the brain. In NIH, National Institute of Health news release, NTP senior scientist John Butcher said, "We believe that the link between radiofrequency radiation and tumors in male rats is real, and the external experts agreed. But amazingly, the FDA says it disagrees with this carefully conducted peer-reviewed study finding of clear evidence of carcinogenicity. Say that 5 times fast. According to Jeffrey Shuren, director of the FDA's Center for Devices and Radiological Health, these findings should not be applied to human cell phone usage, adding that we believe the existing safety limits for cell phones remains acceptable for protecting the public health. While expressing this opinion, Dr. Shuren neglects to note that the International Agency for Research on Cancer, a part of the World Health Organization, classified radio frequency radiation from wireless devices as a possible human carcinogen, based largely on findings of increased risk of gliomas and Schwann cell tumors in the brain near the ear in humans after long-term use of cell phones. Thus, The same tumor types are elevated in both animals and humans exposed to cell phone radiation. This FDA position is quite unusual because it was this agency that nominated cell phone radiation emitted from wireless communication devices to the NTP for toxicity and carcinogenicity studies in experimental animals so as to provide the basis to assess the risk of human health. At that time, the FDA reasoned that existing exposure guidelines are based on protection from acute injury from thermal effects of RFR, radio frequency radiation exposure, and may not be protective against any non-thermal effects of chronic exposure. By adopting this new position and ignoring the NTP's results, the FDA is clearly shirking its responsibility of assessing the impact on human health of radio frequency radiation. Simply claiming that conclusions about human risk cannot be drawn from animal studies runs counter to standard practices of evaluating human cancer risks by public health agencies like the US EPA, NTP, IARC, and even the FDA. Every chemical known to cause cancer in humans is also carcinogenic in animals when adequately tested. The NTP studies were conducted to test the widely held assumption that cell phone radiation could not cause cancers or other adverse health effects because this type of radiation did not have sufficient energy to break chemical bonds. The NTP findings that cell phone radiation caused cancer in the heart and brain, DNA damage in brain cells, heart muscle disease, and reduced birth weights clearly demonstrate that the assumptions that non-ionizing radiation cannot cause cancer or other health effects is wrong. Oh boy. I guess Kevin is
Is
not with
John
us.
here?
Yeah. This is this has been controversial and bannered about for decades. And there is actually a good real world evidence way to disambiguate this that I have not seen a really well conducted study to get the answer. And the way to do it would be to look at people who had lateral brain tumors and line that up against which side of their head they usually held their cell phone, because the dissipation of energy is the inverse of the cube of the distance. So if you hold your phone up to your right ear, the radiation on the left side of your brain is a tiny fraction of what it is on the right side. And so the point is that there should be a preponderance of tumors on the side of the head that, and everyone on this call knows they usually put the phone up to one ear or the other based on handedness or based on hearing. And that study wouldn't be that hard to do if somebody took it upon themselves to do it carefully.
But
I've not seen that study done, but that I believe would provide a definitive answer.
John, that's super compelling, but what about drivers, right? Because you're a left-handed driver, you're typically going to get solar radiation on your left side. Most of my moles are on my left side, I noticed. So I don't know.
Yeah, solar radiation doesn't penetrate into the brain nearly the way that cell radiation does. So I mean, it's a good question um, because skin cancer, it used to be predominantly, 30 years ago, when men would do most of the driving. Skin cancers were predominantly left arm on men and right arm on women. That's no longer true, obviously, but that was actually a finding decades ago, based upon uh, uh, gender dominance of driving position. So you're correct. That is that laterality and solar radiation from driving is a known phenomenon, but I don't think that the carcinogenic aspect of solar radiation penetrates as well. I'll have to look that up.
Anyway, wear
Thank
a
you, John.
headset or Bluetooth. That's one thing I've always.
Yes.
The problem with Bluetooth is that runs at 2.4 gigahertz, which does
Well,
vibrate
it's
water
a
into
hundred thousand, a thousandth of the power, as you know. So I mean, it's a
yeah,
tiny,
yeah.
tiny fraction of the power emitted.
John, how do they do these cell phone tests on rats? Do they use that little micro cell phone that Will Ferrell used on Saturday Night Live?
How did you know?
Any people with aliases? Okay. So next up is from Oh, that was the one from Kevin that I just retweeted. Next one's from David again from NPR. TikTokers are trading stocks by watching what members of Congress do. Young investors have a new strategy, watching financial disclosures of sitting members of Congress for stock tips. Among a certain community of individual investors on TikTok, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi's stock trading disclosures are a treasure trove. Shouts out to Nancy Pelosi, the stock market's biggest whale, said user CO Watch List. Another said, I've come to the conclusion that Nancy Pelosi is a psychic, while adding that she is the queen of investing. She knew, declared Chris Josephs, analyzing particular trade in Pelosi's financial disclosures, and you would have known if you had followed her portfolio. Last year, Josephs noticed that the trades actually made Pelosi's investor husband and merely disclosed by the speaker were performing well. Josephs is the co-founder of a company called Iris, which shows other people's stock trades. In the past year and a half, he has been taking advantage of a law called the Stock Act, which requires lawmakers to disclose stock trades and those of their spouses within 45 days. Now, on Joseph's social investing platform, you can get a push notification every time Pelosi's stock trading disclosures are released. He's personally investing when he sees which stocks are picked. I'm at the point where if you can't beat them, join them, Joseph told NPR, adding that he sees trades on her disclosures. I typically do buy. The next one she does, I'm going to buy.
And Rand Paul is also another famously, his wife as well. So I mean, it's the question is how the question with regards to the equity or whether that's an issue on the timing and all the insider trading thing. It's a real issue in Washington with regards to the legislators and what they're able to how they get the access to information, how they trade. So
Well, they
It's
write the rules, and they're within the rules that they write so far, which is kind of
But
sad.
yeah, it's a huge issue because you had a lot of them who were shorting the S&P before the 2008 financial crash. There's all sorts of stuff. Senator Burr, who I think is retiring, who chairs this like maybe Senate Intelligence. He knew what stocks to buy and not buy because he knew COVID was coming before the rest of us. I mean, there's a lot of stuff.
Ah, so Krishna in the audience wants to make it perfectly clear again that the tweet I sent out was not from her. And she's very upset that I said that the tweet was from Krishna and it's not her. So she wants everyone to know that's absolutely not the Krishna in the audience, that it has her name of Krishna in the audience. Of course, there could be 50 Krishnas in the audience with the number of, we have 500 people with different aliases, of course. But the person with the name Krishna in the audience is not the person who sent the tweet that I shared when I said this article from Krishna in the audience. So are we clear about that? She wants to make perfectly clear. It's super important to Krishna in the audience, the person named Krishna in the audience, that the tweet that was sent that I shared on Twitter is not actually from her.
Let's
This
get
is,
her
I,
up.
I'm
I,
confused because I know a Krishna and it's a male.
I think
well,
she's using you. I think it's a way to draw attention to somebody who has no attention.
Well, so look, I'm David. Tyler knows that. I'm not David. When he says David, everybody knows that, it's not me. But, it's just, whatever. It's relevant to some people, I suppose.
yeah. She says, you could just said here it was someone else instead of responding publicly where I can't even respond. Yeah. So she says I'm a coward because I'm not inviting her on the stage to debate this. There's nothing to debate. She just wants to make it clear that she felt it was wrong that I said, here's a tweet, here's a next article from Krishna in the audience, when her name happens to be Krishna and she happens to be in the audience, but it wasn't her. So it's no, we're just making it perfectly clear, Krishna, that tweet wasn't from you. So you can sleep sound tonight knowing that everyone knows that tweet wasn't from you. It was from somebody else.
I'm sensing that you two both swiped right on this.
So the next article is probably not from anyone with any kind of name with a K. Good. It's not. It's someone with a name that starts with an S, named Cigar. And this one's from Northwestern University. and it's about a winged microchip, is smallest ever human-made flying structure. The size of a grain of sand, dispersed microflyers could monitor air pollution, airborne disease, and environmental contamination. And it's smaller than a grain of sand, and they fly with a microchip. And they can do all kinds of cool new technological things here. So here comes the future. And God help the folks that are worried about 5G and vaccines and everything and microchips, now that the microchips are flying down from the air like sand. Sweet Jesus, help us all when that happens. So
This isn't going to end well. This is not ending well for us, guys.
So the next one's from Dr. Danish. That Anheuser-Busch, the maker of one of America's biggest beer manufacturers, is rolling out an outdoor co-working space platform called TreeWork. Not WeWork, TreeWork. And Danish can't tell if this is a joke or not. From Anheuser-Busch, I got to tweet this out for everyone to see it from the Twitter account. And it's a screenshot from Anheuser-Busch's Facebook account. And it says, the major flaw with co-working spaces, they're indoors. Introducing TreeWork, Busch Beer's new co-working space in the Colorado wilderness where you can connect to both high-speed Wi-Fi and beautiful landscape. Here you can do it all with an ice-cold Busch Light by your side. If you want to branch out with the way you work, bring it all outside with TreeWork. Reserve your space at bush.com/treework. So if you want to see if this is a joke or not, I think that would be your first step, would be to go to that website.
Just to frame it, when you and I were kids, Bush was like $3.99 a 12er, right? Like this was not the top of the line beer, right?
Mm-hmm. So the next one is from Reuters, that SoftBank-backed Oyo from India, which is taken over the hospitality industry globally. So Oyo is going to file for a $1.2 billion IPO next week. And it happens to be, if I remember correctly, India's youngest billionaire. Is that one of the other related stories? It's a very young guy who had a...
He was Tyler,
Yes?
India's youngest billionaire, but there's a few others that have come with all the new unicorns.
Right.
There's quite a few of them now.
Yeah. And truly phenomenal thing he's done here, where basically he figured out how to very efficiently run a hotel technologically, branded it Oyo. And then if you hit partners with other hotels that are mom and pop hotels who are not being run efficiently technologically, it says, listen, I've got a brand. People like my brand. They like my website. They like all my tools. I help make more money for hotels. Would you like to make more money? Your brand sucks. Mine doesn't. Let's use my brand on your hotel and use my tools, my technological tools, and let's make more money. And we can market this thing online. There's a thing called the internet. We can put your hotel on the interwebs, and people can book through their devices, because you, as a mom and pop hotel owner, don't have a clue how to turn on your computer. So it's been kind of genius, actually, how they've cloudified.
Hey, Tyler,
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Do you know that Paul Davidson just put on a schedule for 2 hours from now, a surprise mini town hall that he's got an announcement to make? Do you know
No,
what that's about? Is he
I
going to
don't.
announce like a subscription fee, or he's going public or something
They
for the
just
business
hired.
model?
There's a new hire today, who's meant to work with. She's based and working with media in LA, and they had another hire recently in a similar kind of role of news from NPR, and they're certainly making some interesting key hires to build out media relations and partnerships of those types. So I would imagine it's something along those lines, but I'm just guessing.
I don't know if if he would run a whole room just a hire, but who knows?
No, but maybe they made a big partnership. For example, they were announcing one with who was it? The athletes, not LeBron James, was it? Somebody else, a basketball player and a notable football star.
Stephen Curry.
Yes, Stephen
Stephen
Curry.
Curry. Yeah, yeah.
So it might be that. So the next one's from BB, and she says it's Jeopardy time. Bitcoin adoption. Which countries could follow El Salvador? And she wants to play a little tech news Jeopardy. Which it says the Bitcoin law came into effect September 7th, and which countries are expected to be next on board for jumping on the Bitcoin train?
Nigeria?
Vietnam?
Hold on.
Haiti,
Hold on. No, 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 no,
Argentina,
no,
Mexico?
no,
Guatemala.
no. Close.
Philippines.
No. One that I've been saying just to give you a hint, I've been naming one particularly every time El Salvador comes up. Not every time, but Cuba, who has they've already pegged their currency to the US dollar, and they would like to get off the US dollar, and they're quite friendly with El Salvador. And so Cuba's president, Miguel Diaz-Canel, indicated an interest in cryptocurrencies in May. The Banco Central de Cuba approved Resolution 2015 of 2021, which recognizes cryptocurrencies on September 15th, just a couple days ago, a couple of days after El Salvador's Bitcoin law became effective, despite authorizing cryptocurrency use in Cuba. And the central bank also warned against unscrupulous actors exploiting the anonymity of crypto transactions for illegal purposes. Anyway, the Ukraine is also in the running, and Panama. Next up, thank you for that one, BB. The next one is Google moves Delhi High Court after leak of confidential report. Google, in a statement, said it aims to prevent any further unlawful disclosures of confidential findings by the investigative arm of the Competition Commission of India. Uh-oh. India leaked something? Google on Thursday said it has moved the Delhi High Court against the leak of antitrust body CCI's confidential report pertaining to the investigation against the tech giant. Google, in a statement, said it aims to prevent any further unlawful disclosures of confidential findings by the investigative arm of the CCI. The tech giant noted that it has not yet received or reviewed this confidential report. Google filed a writ petition in the Delhi High Court seeking redress in this matter, specifically protesting against the breach of confidence which impairs Google's ability to defend itself and harms Google and its partners. Last week, reports had stated that CCI's investigation arm, the Director General, has found that Google indulged in unfair business practices in relation to Android. After prima facie finding alleged violation of competition norms, CCI in early 2019 had ordered a detailed probe against Google in this regard. We are deeply concerned that the Director General's report, which contains our confidential information in an ongoing case, was leaked to the media while in the CCI's custody. Protecting confidential information is fundamental to any governmental investigation, and we are pursuing our legal right to seek redress and prevent any further unlawful disclosures, the Google spokesperson said in the statement. The spokesperson added that the company cooperated fully and maintained confidentiality throughout the investigative process. We hope and expect the same level of confidentiality from institutions we engage with, the spokesperson said. The company stated that the DG's findings do not reflect the final decision of the CCI, and the submission of the investigation report is an interim procedural step. Google has not yet had the opportunity to review the DG's findings, much less submit its defense of any allegations, the statement said. Careful, Google. That's you gotta be careful how rocking any boats there in India. And then speaking of India, Vinay sent in this one that Amazon creates 110,000 seasonal jobs in India ahead of the festive season. This year, seasonal hiring has strengthened its inclusive workforce by adding 50% more women, close to 60% more disabled persons, and over 100% increase in LGBTQAI plus representation. And Evan sends in a hysterically funny viral video of a crow attacking a Google drone delivery.
Surprisingly resilient, the drone.
Yes.
I assumed that thing was going down, but
Crows are hardcore, man. Have you guys ever seen a crow take out like a hawk?
I've been attacked by a crow, so I don't. It's yeah, they are. I agree.
They're tough.
So
Raven.
you were in that movie, Evan?
Yeah, I was the guy. It was yeah.
You were the guy trying to run to the car. Okay.
Adults who consume, this one from Lucast, adults who consume dairy are less likely to develop heart disease. The Australian study claimed that nutrients inside dairy have protective effects on the heart and help it function normally. So go ahead and get those slices of cheese on your next Subway tuna footlong. And Katarina sends in this one from Futurism that brain implant entrepreneur says his inbox is filled with furries. Max Hodak, the former president of Neuralink, who recently started a new neurotech company, says that furries are frequently reaching out. What the hell is he talking about? This is the CEO of Elon Musk's Neuralink, who left about a month ago, and now he's got a new company, not surprisingly. So he co-founded Neuralink with Elon Musk and served as president until he left the neural implant company in May. And to all the furries in my inbox, patience, please. Hopefully technology will enable everyone to be their best selves. Hodak didn't specify what exactly the furries were asking him, but seeing as Hodak's someone who recently launched a new neurotech startup and who's made grandiose claims about the future of neural implants, it's easy to imagine why such an enthusiastic role-playing community might flock to him. This is quite peculiar, but there's a link to his new startup, which I didn't know about previously. Secretive startup. Fired from
Tyler,
yeah.
evidently he likes Greek mythology, referencing the Furies.
Okay. Yeah, it could be that. But the article implies like big furry costume cosplay animals. So Katarina sent in this one from bigthink.com, dark energy. It's often debated what the hell is dark matter and dark energy. And people debate that dark energy might be a particle or a field. And this article says dark energy might be neither a particle nor a field. Everything else in the universe is either a particle or a field. Dark energy behaves as neither, and may be a property inherent to space itself. Such an interesting jacuzzi conversation, that one. So the next one is from Jeff G. from CNN. Europe's gas crisis is also a renewables crisis, but European natural gas prices have soared so high that hundreds of millions of people could be facing cold homes or inflated energy bills over the winter. And Cheryl sends in this one from TechCrunch that Nigerian fintech called Hervest, not Harvest, Hervest, wants to bring financial inclusion to more African women. Hence the name Hervest, like invest, but Hervest, not harvest, Hervest. And Katarina sends in this one that nanoscale discovery could help to cool down overheating in electronics. A team of physicists at Colorado University at Boulder has solved the mystery behind a perplexing phenomena in the nano realm, why some ultra-small heat sources cool down, and hopefully putting it to good use. Evan sends in this one from India Times that Indian scientists discover bacteria that eats toxic metals in water, making it safer to drink. Scientists from India's Banaras Hindu University have isolated a bacteria which separates toxic material from water. And they describe how it works in the article I just tweeted. And then The Intercept sent me an email in my inbox with this one called Shadow Dragon, inside the social media surveillance software that can watch your every move. The tool is the product of a growing industry whose work is usually kept from the public and utilized by the police.
I
So
like the name Shadow Dragon. That's awesome.
Yeah. It says, a Michigan State Police contract obtained by The Intercept sheds new light on the growing use of a little-known surveillance software that helps law enforcement agencies and corporations watch people's social media and other website activity. The software, put out by a Wyoming company called Shadow Dragon, allows police to suck in data from social media and other internet sources, including Amazon dating apps and the dark web, so they can identify persons of interest and map out their networks during investigations by providing powerful searches of more than 120 different online platforms and a decade's worth of archives. The company claims to speed up profiling work from months to minutes. Shadow Dragon even claims its software can automatically adjust its monitoring and help predict violence and unrest. Michigan police acquired the software through a contract with another obscure online policing company named Caseware, with a K, for an MSP enterprise criminal intelligence system. The inner workings of the product are generally not known to the public. The contract and materials published by the companies online allow a deeper explanation of how this surveillance works, provided below. Shadow Dragon has kept a low profile, but has law enforcement customers well beyond Michigan. It was purchased twice by the U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement Agency, otherwise known as ICE, in the last 2 years, documents show, and was reportedly acquired by the Massachusetts State Police and other police departments within the state. Michigan officials appear to be keeping their contract and identities of Shadow Dragon and Microsoft from the public. The Michigan website does not make the contract available. It instead offers an email address at which to request a document due to the sensitive nature of the contract. So what does it do? Last year, The Intercept published several articles detailing how a social media analytics firm called Dataminer relayed tweets about the George Floyd and Black Lives Matter protests to police. The same year, I detailed The Intercept's how Caseware partner Microsoft helped police surveil and patrol communities through its own offerings and a network of partnerships. The new revelation about the Michigan contract raises questions about how digital surveillance capabilities other police departments and law enforcement agencies in the U.S. might be quietly acquiring. And it comes at a time when previously known government social media surveillance is under fire from civil rights and liberties advocates like the ACLU. It also raises the specter of further abuses in Michigan, where the FBI has been profiling Muslim communities and so-called Black identity extremists. In 2015, it was revealed that for years, the state police agency was using cell site simulators to spy on mobile phones without disclosing it to the public. Social media surveillance technologies, such as the software acquired by Michigan State Police, are often introduced under the false premise that they are public safety and accountability tools. In reality, they endanger Black and marginalized communities, says the vice president and chief of campaigns at the civil rights nonprofit Color of Change. Michigan Police spokesperson Shannon Banner said in an email that the investigative tools available to us as part of this contract are only used in conjunction with criminal investigations, following all state and federal laws. The founder of Shadow Dragon, Daniel Clemens, wrote that the company provides only information that is publicly available and does not build products with predictive capabilities. Caseware and Shadow Dragon are part of a shadow industry of software firms that exploit what they call open source intelligence, the trails of information that people leave on the internet. Clients include intelligence agencies, governments, police, corporations, and even schools. So very similar to, in this regard, very similar to, what's it called? Charles's, what's it called? The facial recognition company, Clearview, which basically builds a database of all of everybody's photos online using facial recognition. It's all stuff online. They didn't hack into anybody's inboxes or to get the data. Neither is Shadow Dragon. Shadow Dragon's just sucking up all of your social media data across all of your profiles and serving it on a silver platter. It's saving time, essentially. But it's not hacking into anybody's stuff. It's all stuff that you voluntarily put publicly on the public interwebs. So don't do that. Don't share stuff that could cause you your own trouble. I think would be the
A
lesson
lot of
there.
what's shared online is not permission based. If you're in a picture with a bunch of people, you didn't necessarily give permission if you're like in the background or something like that. So you're technically correct, but yeah, but there's just there's no filter again on the use on their use of consensual assets or not. Hard to police, but I'm just saying it's the world we live in.
Yeah. So, Cami, you have this one about Stanford releases report on the current state of AI from Psychology Today.
Yes, this is a report that they put out, Stanford, and every 5 years. It started in 2016. It's called the AI 100 report, and it's a comprehensive look at the current state of AI. And it's wonderful in that it does a deep dive into the technical, but at a level that anyone can understand. You don't have to be technical to understand the implications of what this could have on our future. And they pledge to do this every 5 years for at least 100 years. So this is the second in the series. And it is truly one of the best snapshots of what is going on in the world with AI. And this one is a lot more global. The inaugural one was a little more North American focused 5 years ago. And it's put together by a wide panel that includes industry and academia. So this is something I think it's pretty important if you're in the tech industry and if you want to know what's going to happen, what you need to know. This is one report that I would consider a must read.
It's all open source, free. How do they make money on
Yes,
it?
that's what's so amazing about it. This type of quality of analysis usually is stuff what you think of the top tier consulting companies like McKinsey or whomever would charge hundreds of thousands of dollars to prepare. So yes, this is open source, and the link to the report is in the article.
Okay. So, somebody's Dan Held, who is working, he's, I believe he's part of the team working with Jack Dorsey on Bitcoin stuff, just says he has an announcement. Twitter just launching Bitcoin Lightning tipping.
It was me, Tyler. I sent you that news.
Oh, and you sent me the DM, Aram. Yes, Aram sent me the DM about this 14 minutes ago. And he tweeted about it about the same time, 14 minutes ago. So this is a 14-minute ago announcement from Dan Held, who I think is who Jack hired to run the TBD company, which is their kind of unclear initiative around Bitcoin.
The
Yeah.
D stack is striking back now, right now, right? Like we have the dollar hegemon, we have Belt and Road, and the D stack is now hitting.
Yeah. So Twitter just launching Bitcoin Lightning tipping. So you can tip people in Bitcoins in their Twitter accounts. You can, for example, my personal Twitter account, and I believe also the Tech News Around the World Twitter account, are both able to receive tips and what they call a tip jar, I think. But you can tip it with multiple different apps like PayPal, Cash App, etc. And now apparently you can also tip with Bitcoin. Tipping, including with Bitcoin, will be live on iOS immediately, it says. Starting Thursday, Twitter users on iOS will be able to connect third-party tipping services to their profile on the social media site. That will include the ability to link to both Bitcoin addresses and Lightning Network addresses. Twitter also announced today that it will add non-fungible tokens, NFT verification features to the platform, a key step in the evolution of the booming trend for unique digital art, particularly as social media avatars. No specific timeline was laid out for the feature, which remains in development. But this gets very interesting. Then now people can start tipping with Bitcoin, but there's far bigger implications, which I discussed with Twitter's chief financial officer, Ned, I don't know, 5-6 months ago when Cheryl was in the chat that we did in Twitter Spaces, where I asked him 5 months ago, hey, Ned, as chief financial officer of Twitter, is it possible that you might use Bitcoin as a way for users to exchange Bitcoins with each other and to receive tips as Bitcoins? And then obviously go one step further where people are going to start selling stuff on Twitter as they start to e-commerceify as a social commerce platform, that we might sell stuff. And being that Twitter's a big global platform, that it might make more sense to use Bitcoin as a way to do that. And he says, that's a really interesting question. And so here's the headline. And is it possible that Jack Dorsey, knowing that he was going to announce this today, has been buying up a lot of Bitcoin in anticipation of making Bitcoin an integral part of Twitter? And the e-commerceification of Twitter, which is on, we've seen the screenshots of, which is coming. Like how to pay for Twitter rooms, what are they called? Ticketed spaces. So when Taylor Swift does a concert, she could now do, she could accept Bitcoin as a payment method, or when anyone with any kind, or also there's another premium feature, paid feature of their version of OnlyFans, which they call super followers, or where you pay to be a follower of somebody and get their access to their exclusive content. You could then also pay with Bitcoin for that. And they have lots of new paid features coming that are all
Nice to see Jack interested
That's
in Twitter again.
great news for the NFT community, especially the one who are already holding those tokens for special events and access.
It says the tipping feature will rely entirely on third-party payments services like the Strike app. Twitter is not in the flow of funds and will not take a percentage of tipping proceeds, the company said. Different payment options or tipping services will be available to users in different parts of the world. The exception, according to Twitter product team member Esther Crawford, will be Bitcoin and Lightning options, which will be available to all Twitter users worldwide. There's this great opportunity for us to choose global barrierless options, Crawford said during the call. And Bitcoin represents one of the best options. We know not everyone around the world transacts with Bitcoins yet, but we think it's one of the better solutions. There. Esther answers my question to Ned 6 months ago in Twitter Spaces.
Is Bitcoin Lightning just a brand, or is it actual? Is there some technology involved?
It's the technology. It's to oversimplify it, in the same way that credit cards handle and expedite the transaction and make it lickety fast for you to make a financial transaction at a retailer, Lightning makes it a lickety split quick for you to do a Bitcoin transaction with another partner.
Cool.
So you can have near real-time settlements.
Because normally it does take like 35 minutes and Lightning takes way shorter time.
Here it comes. It'll be really interesting to see how this impacts Bitcoin. Okay, let's pause it there, and we will join again tomorrow for a very fun Friday edition, and an awesome thank you to everybody for another fun